Good afternoon, Jets fans. Please be seated and go Jets, go! Routine proceedings. Introduction of bills. The Honourable Minister for Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister for Justice, that Bill number 39, the Residential Tenancies Amendment Act 3, loi de modification de loi sur la location de usage d'habitation, be now read a first time.
It has been moved by the Honourable Minister of Consumer Protection and Government Services and seconded by the Honourable Minister of Justice that Bill number 39, the Residential Tenancies Amendment Act 3, be now read a first time. The Honourable Minister of Consumer Protection and Government Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to introduce Bill 39, which will clarify evidentiary considerations with respect to applications or orders of possession to evict tenants that are engaged in unlawful activities. This bill aligns with government priorities to improve community safety while addressing stakeholder feedback and promoting greater understanding and transparency. And I'm pleased to present this bill to the House for its consideration.
Hear, hear.
Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed? Agreed and so ordered. Committee reports. The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to present the second report of the Standing Committee on Justice.
Your Standing Committee on Justice presents.
The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for McPhillips, that the report of the committee be received.
It has been moved by the Honourable Member for La Vérendrye, seconded by the Honourable Member for McPhillips, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed? Agreed and so ordered. Further committee reports. The Honourable Member for Dauphin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to present the third report of the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development.
Here.
Your Standing Committee on Social and Economic
Dispense. The Honourable Member for Dauphin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move, seconded by the Honourable Member for Brandon East, that the report of the committee be received.
It has been moved by the Honourable Member for Dauphin, seconded by the Honourable Member for Brandon East, that the report of the committee be received. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Agreed? Agreed and so ordered. Tabling of reports. Ministerial statements. The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Community Wellness, and I would indicate that the required 90 minutes notice prior to routine proceedings was provided in accordance with our Rule 27 Bracket 2. Would the Honourable Minister please proceed with her statement?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This year, the Canadian Mental Health Association's Mental Health Week is May 1st to 7th, with Child and Youth Mental Health Day falling on May 7th. This week and every day, I would like to commend mental health care providers and organizations for their dedication in supporting Manitobans impacted by mental health issues and for the valuable role they play in Manitoba's healthcare system. A strong mental health system with prevention and early intervention services is a key component of our healthcare system. In honor of Mental Health Week, I encourage all Manitobans to speak openly about mental health and check in with family, friends, and colleagues. For those of you struggling today, please know that you are not alone. Reach out to someone you trust and know that support and resources are available to everyone in Manitoba. Thank you.
The honourable member for Point Douglas.
Miigwech, Madam Speaker. Next week is Mental Health Week and Child and Youth Mental Health Day. Sadly, we know that there is still a stigma against mental health issues and accessing treatment for them. Mental health is a time to counter this stigma by remembering that we all have struggled at some point in our lives. It's important that we support one another in seeking the help that we need and that the resources are there for those who need them. As next week is also Child and Youth Mental Health Week, it is also important to remember that many Indigenous children and youth on First Nations are struggling with mental health. We saw the consequences in Chatascawayak with the suicide epidemic a couple of years ago. I was fortunate enough to go out and support that community and work alongside and saw the amazing community come together to support, and I'd like to see that also in Manitoba here. It's crucial that we ensure young people in First Nations have the support as well as here in Winnipeg. Fortunately, there are many organizations in our community are working every day to support those. Canadian Mental Health Society and the Manitoba NDP
The member's time has expired. Leave has been requested for the member to conclude her statement. Is there leave? Leave has been granted. The honourable member for Point Douglas.
Miigwech. Fortunately, there are many organizations and individuals in our community who are working every day to help those who are struggling. One of those is the Canadian Mental Health Association, which provides programming, events, research, and other supports to promote mental health and help those who are struggling. The Manitoba NDP also passed a bill to recognize Eating Disorder Awareness Week each year. This affects many children here in our province. To everyone who works on the front lines providing mental health care, I want to thank you all for the incredible life-saving work that you are doing. We see you, we recognize you, we stand with you, and we acknowledge you and uplift you for all of your work. And for those struggling, know that you are not alone. Many of us struggle with you. Miigwech.
The honourable member for River Heights.
Madam Speaker, I ask leave to speak to the minister's statement.
Does the member have leave to respond to the ministerial statement? Leave has been granted. The honourable member for River Heights.
Madam Speaker, I welcome the opportunity to talk about mental health, and in particular, the mental health of children, and to thank all the professionals who provide care in these areas. Mental wellness is as important as physical wellness. The absence of mental well-being can be associated with the development of physical illnesses. Indeed, this is one of the reasons that Manitoba Liberals have for many years advocated for putting psychological therapies under our Medicare system so they can be publicly funded as our help for physical health issues. The pandemic drastically increased the incidence of mental health conditions in children. Indeed, we need a task force to address backlogs and wait times in mental health areas as well as physical health, especially for things like addictions and eating disorders, where there are major shortfalls currently. Thank you.
Further ministerial statements, the Honourable Minister of Labour and Immigration, and I would indicate that the required 90 minutes notice prior to routine proceedings was provided in accordance with Rule 27, Bracket 2. Would the Honourable Minister please proceed with his statement?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The National Day of Mourning is held and recognized every April 28th by over 100 countries around the world, and is an opportunity to pause and reflect while honoring those Manitobans who died while on the job and those workers who suffered workplace injuries or illnesses performing their duties. In 2022, 21 of our fellow Manitobans lost their lives as a result of work-related incidents and occupational diseases. Many more Manitoba workers were hurt seriously enough to cause permanent injury or require time away from their jobs. Those lost were much more than workers. They were also our family members, friends, colleagues, and neighbors. Tomorrow, there will be many events occurring throughout the province in commemoration. I encourage my colleagues and all Manitobans to take part in the Safe Workers of Tomorrow's Leaders Walk starting at 11:30 a.m. at the Union Centre on Broadway and proceeding to Memorial Park where we gather for a commemoration ceremony organized by the Manitoba Federation of Labour. At that time, I'll read a proclamation to recognize the day of mourning on behalf of the province of Manitoba. Our government will continue to prioritize and be steadfast in our ongoing commitment to work with our partners in labor and management to improve occupational health and safety policies, procedures, and conditions in the workplace. And we want to ensure that when workers go to work at the start of their day, they come home safely to their loved ones at the end of each day. Let's continue to work together to support workers in the workplace, including here at the Manitoba Legislature, and to ensure that no injury, illness, or death occurs at our place of work or any workplace. Madam Speaker, as we won't be in this place tomorrow for the National Day of Mourning, I'd like to ask that all members stand for a moment of silence to honor all Manitoba workers who suffered a workplace illness or injury or who were killed in the workplace. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Notre Dame.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, we take a moment to reflect and remember members of our community who we have lost as a result of injuries or illnesses related to their work. April 28 is National Day of Mourning, and it's a time we dedicate to those who are killed, injured, or made sick because of their work. I would like to use this opportunity to say thank you to the unions and advocates for the significant progress that has been made over the years to protect workers. Continuous improvements to workplace health and safety laws are necessary as new issues are identified. Instead, the PCs have cut safety measures protecting apprentices. PCs have cut staffing levels and enforcement activity at workplace safety and health, and workers are still waiting for the government to fulfill its duty to include a list of deadly diseases in the Workers' Compensation Act we know to be occupational killers. Healthcare workers, our healthcare heroes, are asking the government to commit to safe work certification programs. This would greatly reduce the very high number of injury rates happening to healthcare aides, home care workers, and others in the healthcare sector. I hope my colleagues across the chamber will listen when I say we need to strengthen our resolve to establish safe and healthy conditions in the workplace. At this time, I'd like to recognize the Berrien family from the Notre Dame constituency. I'd like to give them my heartfelt condolences because they lost their son, John Lloyd, in February 2022 due to a workplace homicide. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Tyndall Park.
Madam Speaker, I ask for leave to respond to the minister's statement.
Does the member have leave to respond to the ministerial statement? Leave has been granted. The honourable member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise this afternoon to speak to the National Day of Mourning. Every year, we take this time to step back and reflect upon those who have lost their lives from being injured on the job. According to the Association of Workers' Compensation Boards of Canada, in 2021, there were 1,081 workplace fatalities reported in Canada. Among these deaths were 18 workers between the ages of 15 and 24. Madam Speaker, we need to continue to strive for worker safety and ensure it is taken seriously in our workplaces. This is something all levels of government can work towards improving. For example, our city government has a role to play with transit and bus driver safety. Our federal government has a role to play with air traffic, specifically airport security, staff, and pilots. They all deserve to be safe on the job. And lastly, Madam Speaker, provincially, we can look at the ratio of apprenticeship programs being reinstated and ways to alleviate burnout in our healthcare system, as often accidents happen when we are not getting enough sleep or we are not doing well mentally. With respect to mental health, we need to regulate psychotherapy in our province. Regulation would better ensure people can access mental health resources and would better ensure those providing these services are properly trained to do so. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the government for recent legislation that expands workplace injury claims for wildlife firefighters, as it is a positive step, but we need to do more. Lastly, we want to extend our condolences to the many friends and family members who may have lost someone due to a workplace injury, and I'd like to ask this House for a moment of silence to recognize this day and all those we have lost.
Is there leave for a moment of silence? Leave has been granted. Please rise. Member statements. The Honourable Member for Rossmere.
Madam Speaker, I rise to honour the legacy of the Bay Coven, which after 67 years served its last customers on April 15th. The Bay Coven is a family-owned bakery, store and cafe which announced to the sadness of area residents its closure to facilitate the much-deserved retirement of its owner, Marty Posthumus Jr., who joins us with his wife, Judy, in the gallery today. The Bay Coven was started by Marty's father, Martin Posthumus Sr., and his wife, Sally, who immigrated to Canada from the Netherlands in 1951. Their first location opened in 1955 as a corner bake shop in the North End. The Bay Coven then moved to Monroe Avenue in 1960, and in 1978, Martin sold the business to his son, Marty. In 1986, they opened their Edison Avenue location, and in 1990 added a restaurant to this location called the Bruin Cafe. In 2000, they closed the Monroe Avenue location, leaving the Edison Avenue location as the Bake Oven's home in Rossmere these last 23 years. Madam Speaker, earlier this month, I visited the Bake Oven one last time and met with Marty and his staff to congratulate them on 67 years of serving Winnipeg. Over the years, many have enjoyed the international flavors offered at this landmark North Kildonan bakery, various baked goods, cakes, cheeses, sausage rolls or meat pies, or just a cup of coffee and friendly conversation. The Bake Oven will be missed by many, especially in Rossmere's European community. We are joined today by Marty and his wife, Judy. And I invite all members to join me not only in welcoming them to the Legislature, but thanking them for the Bake Oven's 67 years of service. Congratulations and all the best on your retirement.
The Honourable Member for Kuwait-Nook.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm honored to help welcome the Louis Riel School Division Indigenous Youth Leadership as our guests at the Manitoba Legislative Assembly today. Their group was created so that they had the opportunities to learn more about Indigenous cultures, enhance their sense of belonging, and develop leadership abilities so they can become agents of change. As a leader, we are all responsible for creating a better life, a better future for all Manitobans. The consequences of colonization have impacted Indigenous communities, and the effects are ongoing. This is why, in part, they are here today. I am pleased to present some of the requests from the Louis Riel School Division Indigenous Youth Leadership Team. They write, "We are here to ask you to consider our ideas for lasting changes and reforms that will permit true reconciliation and a better future for all, especially Indigenous peoples living within Manitoba. We ask that the government reform the justice system and work towards eliminating racism and seek to incorporate Indigenous solutions. We ask the government to respect, commemorate, and honor residential school survivors by pronouncing September 30 as a mandatory holiday for all. We ask the government to authentically integrate Indigenous ways of knowing in all subject matter from kindergarten to grade 12. We ask the government to recruit and train more Indigenous educators and healthcare providers. We ask the government to reform the healthcare system by eliminating systemic racism and seek to incorporate Indigenous solutions. We ask the government to further respect and honor the treaties that were signed on this land. Thank you for your time and consideration. And thank you to the Louis Riel School Division Indigenous Youth Leadership Team. I ask all members to join me in thanking the students here today for including the Manitoba Legislature on their journey.
The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize an exceptional member of our community, a leader, a role model, a Winnipeg police officer, a father of three, a community volunteer, a Bear Clan volunteer, a Sports Hall of Famer, and a person that I am proud to call a friend, Brian Krupelo. Born and raised in Winnipeg's North End, Brian holds treaty status through the Pine Creek First Nation. He is married and a father of three adult boys. Brian is a 29-year member of the Winnipeg Police Service at the rank of Staff Sergeant and is a director with the Bear Clan Patrol. Brian is the first status Indigenous official in CFL history, having officiated 278 games and 5 Grey Cups throughout his 19-year career, and he's still going. He also participated in the league's official exchange program with the NFL, officiating a Jacksonville Jaguars preseason game in 2017. On September 30th, 2022, Brian became the first CFL official to announce a penalty in an Indigenous language, making calls between the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in Ojibwe. On April 12th, Brian was inducted into the Manitoba Aboriginal Sports and Recreation Council Hall of Fame. On January 2nd, Brian was inducted into the North American Indigenous Athletic Association Hall of Fame for the 2023 class. Brian is the 3rd official inducted, joining longtime NHL referee Danny McCourt and Minnesota basketball referee Michael Thomas. He is the first CFL alumnus to be enshrined in any category. But more than all of that, the Brian that I know inspires many, many people, including myself. His dedication and his passion for helping the community and his work with the Bear Clan are remarkable and unmatched. But Brian will totally disagree with that statement. He will deny it, and he will credit everyone else around him. In recognition of Brian Krupelow's outstanding contributions to the province, I ask all members of the House to join me in thanking him and his wife, Lori, for their dedication, passion, vision, and commitment to making the lives of others, including my own, better.
The honourable member for Notre Dame.
Madam Speaker, many women in this province continue to face pay discrimination by their employers. Women and racialized people are paid considerably less for doing the same work as their co-workers. Women facing pay discrimination have described feeling humiliated and demoralized at work due to this. The economic effects on yearly and lifetime income is also pronounced and contributes to the feminization of poverty in old age. This morning, the CCPA released a report called Tired of Waiting, Rectifying Manitoba's Pay Gap that focuses a statistical analysis of the pay gap in Manitoba across race, occupation, industries, education, and age. Prior to this report, we could only point to federal statistics on pay discrimination, but now there's evidence that pay discrimination in Manitoba is a lot worse than in other provinces. Within the CCPA report, it is shown that Manitoba women earn 71 cents to every dollar men earned. A discriminatory pay gap exists between men and women in every occupational grouping and in every industry, with women largely working the lowest paid jobs. Under the leadership of the NDP in the 1980s, MLAs like Muriel Smith pioneered efforts to end pay discrimination for women working in the public sector. In addition, many women and racialized folks working under union-negotiated collective agreements are also afforded protections. The federal government has also recently worked towards eliminating pay discrimination in federally regulated workplaces, but Manitoba has yet to update laws for workers who don't fall under these regulations. I've recently introduced bills multiple times in an attempt to end this discrimination, but this PC government consistently rejects them without offering any alternatives to advance women's economic rights. In my work on this topic, I found broad consensus among all those consulted, from workers to employers, that pay discrimination exists in Manitoba. This consensus is now underscored by CCPA's research. I once again urge this PC government to take an important step today and pass the Pay Transparency Act. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for River Heights.
Madam Speaker, today I recognize Elaine Stevenson, who has played a major role to create awareness of eating disorders, spending thousands of hours meeting with people and appearing on many media shows advocating to improve treatment in Manitoba. She's in the gallery with us today. Elaine says, "I am personally aware of the carnage, pain, and nightmare that many families and those with eating disorders go through. Her involvement started when her daughter Alyssa was diagnosed with an eating disorder. She was a bright girl who loved sports, particularly fastball, playing on teams for Sir John Franklin, River Heights, Smitty's Terminators, and the Maples. She struggled for 12 years with her condition and sadly passed away in 2002. Elaine has continued her involvement in Alyssa's memory. Her advocacy has been important in the development of new health services in Manitoba and an improved quality of life for many. Since the mortality rate for children with eating disorders is one of the highest of all mental health issues, it is likely her work has saved many lives. In the late 1990s, Elaine was a founding member of the Eating Disorders Association of Manitoba, EDAM. In May 2021, following her advocacy and that of EDAM, the provincial government established an eating disorders program and treatment center. But the wait times for help for those with eating disorders are still far too long, unacceptably long. As of April 4th, the Women's Health Clinic Provincial Eating Disorder Prevention and Recovery Program had 145 clients waiting for 16 to 18 months. Waiting lists for all eating disorders program needs to be public, published on websites, and accessible to Manitobans, and they need to be much shorter than now. A residential treatment program for eating disorders should also be established in Manitoba. Say thank you, Elaine Stevenson, for all you have done for our province.
We have some guests in the gallery that I would like to introduce to you. Seated in the public gallery, we have Jade Vanderlind, Darius Schreimer, and Rylan Veenendahl, who are the guests of the Honourable Member for Radisson. On behalf of all members here, we welcome you to the Manitoba Legislature. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
People in rural and northern Manitoba deserve to have access to fast broadband internet and cell service. Now more than ever, it's essential for everyday life. That's why it's so disappointing that the PC government and this premier has failed to deliver on this file. For years, they've made announcement after announcement, and yet nothing happens, nobody gets connected. Instead, what they do is privatize our important fiber optic assets while rural and northern Manitobans wait for service. So will the Premier explain why the government has failed to deliver broadband and cell service for people in rural Manitoba and the north?
The Honourable First Minister.
Madam Speaker, we want to ensure that all Manitobans have access to internet services no matter where they live in the province, and that certainly is a priority for our government. Madam Speaker, we take this issue very seriously. We have spoken to those out in various remote communities to see how we can help them make sure that they get access to those services. So we'll continue to take action in this manner, Madam Speaker, and continue to get things done for those who live in remote communities in our province. The
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Fortunately, that's not true. There's no action taking place. I'll read from a letter from Manitoba Hydro sent earlier this week. It says, fiber work associated with the rural broadband expansion program continues to remain on hold at the request of Explorer. End quote. Now, Explorer is, of course, the private company that this government tried to sell off our fiber optic assets to. I'll continue reading the quote here. Explorer is disputing payment of project cost and has directed Manitoba Hydro to cease fiber work until the dispute is resolved. End quote. That's the situation right now, and it means that folks are not being connected to broadband internet. So just to review, a private company is telling Manitoba Hydro, our Crown Corporation, to cease work on an asset that the people of Manitoba own through Manitoba Hydro. Hydro says it's unknown when the situation will be resolved. Why has the government ceased all work on rural broadband in Manitoba?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, Manitobans know that when it comes to Manitoba Hydro, we continue to clean up the $4 billion boondoggle that was left to us by the Leader of the Opposition and other NDP members, Madam Speaker. We continue to clean up that mess. They left Manitoba Hydro riddled with debt, Madam Speaker, very significant. We are taking action to make sure that life is more affordable for Manitobans through Manitoba Hydro, Madam Speaker. We'll continue to take those actions on behalf of Manitobans.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
Madam Speaker, this is a very serious issue for people in rural Manitoba as well as in the north. So I'll share more information from this very concerning letter. Again, this letter says that this private company, Explore, has ordered Manitoba Hydro, which we all own collectively, to stop working on assets that we all own collectively, which were supposed to be connecting more people to broadband internet. This letter goes on to say that Hydro says, quote, at this time it's unknown when a resolution will be reached or when the project will resume, end quote. The government does not know when work is going to resume to connect people to high-speed internet. In fact, the letter also says that this telecom staff have now been redeployed to work on other issues. No plan to resume service, no plan to connect Manitobans, and in the interim, these important public employees are being sent to work in other areas. I'll table the letter so the Premier can see what's happening under her watch, but why has she failed to connect Manitobans to broadband and cell service?
I would just indicate to members in the public gallery that there is to be no participation in the proceedings on the floor, and that means that all members in the public gallery are not to applaud. The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, we as well take this issue very seriously on behalf of those who work in very remote communities in Manitoba, and that's why we are taking action through Manitoba Hydro and other ways to ensure that they get the services that they need, Madam Speaker. What we won't do is take a chapter out of the NDP book, which is to riddle the Manitoba Hydro with record debt, with the boondoggle that they left us to clean up their mess, the $4 billion in cost overruns in Manitoba Hydro. That does nothing, costing, charging rates to go up, causing rates to go up for Manitobans, Madam Speaker. We don't believe that that's the right future for Manitoba Hydro. That's why we've taken action to make life more affordable for Manitobans by ensuring that their hydro rates remain low.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a new question.
Madam Speaker, according to the MLA for Steinbach, the PC government did their, quote, research, end quote, on P3s and found that they were a bad idea for building schools. In fact, he had the government pay some $300,000 to look into this and provide that research, but now this government is throwing that all away. The problems with P3 schools are well known across the country. Nova Scotia, Saskatchewan, Alberta, many provinces have had problems with these P3 schools. The Premier owes Manitobans an explanation. Why is her government ignoring the facts and pushing ahead with P3 schools in our province against the advice of the MLA for Steinbach?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, I appreciate the Leader of the Opposition's question on all the new schools that we're going to be building across the province of Manitoba. In fact, we have a significant number of them, I think 9 that are in the process of being built. We've committed to more than 23, Madam Speaker, in communities right across this great province of ours. So where they failed in building schools, Madam Speaker, we will get it done.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a supplementary question.
Well, it's clear that not many people on that side of the House have much credibility these days. In fact, the minister responsible for this file said he, quote, does not have much context on why the province ruled out P3s in 2018, end quote. I guess the minister responsible doesn't talk to the member for Steinbach very often, but I guess that's a sign of how things are on the PC side of the House these days. Here is the context, Madam Speaker. Nova Scotia, P3 schools cost tens of millions of dollars more. Again, Conservatives in Alberta, of all places, have abandoned P3 schools in that jurisdiction. Yet the Premier is going in the opposite direction. Why is the Premier doubling down on this P3 approach, even though the MLA for Steinbach says they're a bad idea?
The Honourable First Minister.
Madam Speaker, when it comes to the credibility of our Cabinet Minister, we certainly will, we support our Cabinet Minister, Madam Speaker. While I'm not sure how many of his own caucus colleagues of the Leader of the Opposition actually support him, Madam Speaker, but I can tell you that we support our colleague, the member for Steinbach, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, what I will say, and what is important here, is the fact that we are building more schools in the province of Manitoba, unlike the Leader of the Opposition and members opposite who have no plan whatsoever when it comes to educating our kids in our province. We are committed to building 23 more schools right across this great province of ours.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition on a final supplementary.
So, Madam Speaker, is this another flip-flop by the Premier? Because she now says that she supports the member for Steinbach, and he opposes P3 schools. So Manitobans would be forgiven for not following the PC train of thought these days. What we on this side of the House say is that these 9 schools could be built through a public process. They would be built cheaper, they would be built more quickly, and they would be built putting hard-working Manitobans to work on construction projects in our province. But of course, the PCs want to contract it out, and they would like to pay more money to pursue an approach of privatization. So I'll ask the House again for the Premier to tell all of us here today, why is she moving ahead with these P3 school construction projects against the advice of the MLA for Steinbach?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, I know the Leader of the Opposition and members opposite are so concerned about their own ideology. They'll let their own ideology get in the way of actually building schools in our province, Madam Speaker. We won't allow that to happen, Madam Speaker. We will ensure that all 23 of those schools get built, Madam Speaker. Unlike members opposite who are so focused on their own ideology, no school will ever get built in the province of Manitoba.
The Honourable Member for Union Station.
Madam Speaker, at the start of this week, it was revealed that the PC government has been sitting on a draft report showing that over half of Manitoba healthcare workers considered quitting because of their working conditions. Incredibly, days after it's been made public, this health minister says she hasn't seen nor read the report, Madam Speaker. Will the minister commit to Manitobans that she will actually read this report over the coming week, which is constituency break week?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, what are the facts is that a report was commissioned by Shared Health, not by government. It was a draft report that the writers have said are confidential. They would not be released in the draft report. It was never finalized, Madam Speaker. Somehow the members opposite got their hands on it, Madam Speaker. Probably while they were lurking in the back lane, someone opened a door and slipped them a draft report. That is not how we operate on this side of the House, Madam Speaker. We wait for reports to be finalized and properly presented to the entity that commissioned the report.
The Honourable Member for Union Station on a supplementary question.
Madam Speaker, It is really sad that this health minister continues to confirm that she doesn't think she needs to be accountable for the current state of healthcare in our province. Given the terrible state of healthcare under this government, you think she might be even a little bit curious what healthcare workers really think about the job her and her government are doing in regards to healthcare. Will this minister confirm that after this report has sat on a shelf collecting dust for the past year, if she has actually even asked for this report to be finalized?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, again, the facts are that the writer of the report said it was confidential, a word that the members opposite don't understand. It was confidential and not to be released, but it was leaked, and the members opposite got their hands on it, Madam Speaker. But on this side of the House, we don't need reports, Order. Madam Speaker. What we did was go to the front lines and listen to workers, Madam Speaker, develop a health human resource action plan, implement incentives for nurses alone, Madam Speaker, $123 million, Madam Speaker. That is listening and responding, not lurking in back lanes.
The Honourable Member for Union Station on the final supplementary.
Madam Speaker, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised at that kind of wildly outrageous accusation. The minister has a pattern of accusing me of all kinds of wildly outrageous things. Manitobans are correct in their assessment that this government and this minister cannot be trusted when it comes to health care.
Order.
They're keeping negative reports in draft form so that they can just simply pretend these reports don't exist. But while she hides in her office, she's ignoring the concerns of healthcare workers across our province. We are long past the point, Madam Speaker, of plausible deniability. When will this PC health minister listen to healthcare workers regarding their working conditions and their very real concerns?
Great question. Great job.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, I did listen to frontline workers at Health Sciences Centre, St. Boniface Hospital, Grace, Madam Speaker, throughout the rural communities. I did a tour last summer and listened to frontline healthcare workers. You know what I heard, Madam Speaker? In the 17 years they were in power, not one single time did any member of the NDP ever go to the front lines to speak or to listen to healthcare providers. I know that they don't want Manitoba to know of their failures, Madam Speaker, but we listened, we responded with our Health Human Resource Action Plan, $200 million, Madam Speaker. We listened, not dependent on someone to leak a report, a draft report to our government.
The Honourable Member for St. Vital.
For months, we've been calling on the PC government to take action and fix Manitoba student aid. And for months, they've done nothing. Students continue to wait far too long for aid. And when they try to call Manitoba student aid over the phone, they're waiting for far too long on hold. The minister, in fact, shared in estimates the average amount of time that a Manitoba waits is a whopping 34.7 minutes on hold before they even talk to anybody. Can the Premier explain why she has failed to fix Manitoba student aid?
The Honourable Minister of Advanced Education and Training.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, the member opposite and I had a great discussion during estimates where we talked about the increased number of students that we have processed who are applying for student aid, as well as the budget this year that has increased student aid to help more students as they pursue post-secondary education. Madam Speaker, this is a process that we have hired more FTEs to help out with the increased demand, and the member opposite was actually quite impressed with the information that was coming through estimates, the answers that were given. And coming from a member opposite and an NDP team who ignored the student aid and the struggles that students had, I don't think that today he's going to give us any lessons.
The honourable member for St. Vital on a supplementary question.
34.7 minutes on hold. That's the facts right now. And that's just the average, actually, Madam Speaker. Manitobans have to wait just that long to speak to anybody at Manitoba Student Aid. And once they pick up the phone, of course, it's going to take them longer. The reality is that students don't have that much time to wait. They can't spend all day just to get the help that they need. The PCs clearly need to do more to fix Manitoba Student Aid. So I asked the minister today, can she explain to students why she has failed them when it comes to Manitoba Student Aid?
The Honourable Minister of Advanced Education and Training.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do want to clarify there are 24 hours in a day, not 34 minutes. But the member opposite is bringing a good point that we will increasingly improve our services to students in Manitoba, unlike what the NDP did by ignoring the student needs. Their wait times were much longer under the NDP. We are continuously improving our services. And Madam Speaker, I would like to take a moment to thank all of the departmental staff who are dealing with students, who are calling in. They are assisting them. They are helping them access student loans so that they can pursue excellent education right here in our beautiful province.
The honourable member for St. Vital on a final supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In estimates, the minister said that there are a record number of Manitobans applying for student aid. 19,341 applications to Manitoba student aid. But what the minister fails to realize is that when more people require student aid, it means that tuition is unaffordable for Manitobans. And when they try to get the aid from Manitoba student aid, they have to wait on hold for 34.7 minutes on average just to talk to somebody. That's not an efficient use of student time, and it creates additional stresses and headaches for students in Manitoba. Can the minister explain to Manitoban students why she has failed to fix the problems at Manitoba student aid?
The Honourable Minister of Advanced Education and Training.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I would counter those arguments that the member has brought forward in saying that Manitoba is the lowest tuition rates in Western Canada. He knows this to be the truth. We've said it on the record multiple times. I know it's difficult for the members opposite to listen and to hear the good news of Manitoba's student fees. That's what attracts a number of students to our province. And I will say that it's the word of mouth and our government's ability to inform students of the supports that are available to them, including the student bursary programs, that has driven up applications. That's why people are reaching out to receive this support. Where the NDP kept it secret and didn't tell anyone about the supports necessary, we are happy to share with all Manitobans.
The honourable member for Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The state of healthcare in Manitoba is outrageous. And too often, the North is completely ignored. Earlier this week, allied healthcare professionals revealed that a critical shortage in laboratory staffing at Thompson General Hospital, which could threaten to shut down the emergency room services altogether. My question is for the Health Minister. What specifically is she doing today now that she knows of the vacancy crisis at TGH?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to rise to answer the member for Thompson's question. It gives me an opportunity to share again the incredible work that is being done by the Health Human Resource Action Plan Task Force to add 2,000 additional healthcare professionals to the health system, Madam Speaker. There are 3 pillars: retain, train, and recruit, Madam Speaker, and we are seeing great results under that plan, and I look forward to sharing them very soon.
The honourable member for Thompson on a supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That does nothing to address the crisis today, right now. The staffing situation at the Thompson Lab has steadily worsened in recent years. Since 2026, 6 medical laboratory technologists have left positions in Thompson. Currently, there are only 3 technologists out of 12. That's a total of a 75% vacancy rate. Wow. Workload assessment data obtained by MAHCP show that laboratory technologists in Thompson have been forced to work 47 hours straight. This is dangerous. We need these lab techs to provide services to patients and physicians.
The member's time has expired. When I say a member's time has expired, that means you're supposed to sit down and not keep talking. And I would add, there really is no point in yelling in here, especially when we have students. I think they want to see professional behavior on this floor, that we can demonstrate that democracy can work. The Honourable Minister for Health.
Madam Speaker, the Health Human Resource Action Plan aims to support healthcare programs all across the province, Madam Speaker. There are several positions within that Health Human Resource Action Plan that is being targeted for increases, Madam Speaker. Physicians, nurses, allied health professionals, support workers. I look forward to sharing the results of the great work that has been done by the task force very soon.
The honourable member for Thompson on a final supplementary.
Not even a mumble of Thompson in that answer. Madam Speaker, these are basic healthcare services necessary for a hospital to function. Access to lab services is necessary for rapid diagnosis and treatment of patients in car accidents, heart attacks, pregnancy complications, and other emergencies. Will this PC minister apologize to healthcare workers in the North for her government's failure to recruit and retain technologists in Thompson?
Why are you ignoring Thompson?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, Thompson is a concern as well for our government in terms of the services they need. We are pleased to be around the table of solutions with many stakeholders in the North, Madam Speaker, looking at the challenges and the needs of the various northern communities. We will continue to work with those stakeholders on solutions, Madam Speaker. Some of those solutions are contained in the Health Human Resource Action Plan, and I look forward to sharing the results of that plan very soon. Thank you.
The honourable member for Point Douglas.
Which, Madam Speaker, after months of the PCs refusing to release the numbers of overdose deaths in Manitoba in 2022, we finally received the preliminary data. And this data makes it clear that the addictions crisis in Manitoba continues to get worse under this PC government. 418 Manitobans died from an overdose in 2022. That's 418 Manitobans too many. This is a crisis, Madam Speaker. Yet this PC government continues to do nothing. That's shameful. The PC should do the right thing and commit to being transparent and pass Bill 221. Will they do so today?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Community Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I first want to begin by thanking all the frontline workers for all the work that they do, all the support they provide for all the individuals seeking support for their needs, and for the families as well. And to say that individuals are able to see all numbers if they go onto the website. Preliminary numbers have been posted, and contrary to her comment, the numbers posted for 2021 were higher than 2022. Wow.
The honourable member for Point Douglas. Order. The honourable member for Point Douglas on a supplementary question.
Miigwech, Madam Speaker. When we're pointing out numbers here, I want to remind that member that these are Manitobans. These are loved ones. These are people who have lost their lives. And this government continues to do nothing to support these families. They won't open a safe consumption site. They tried to bring a bill forward that would stop organizations who are doing life-saving work from doing their work. And now, they take credit to say that, oh, the numbers are lowered. These are people's lives. So I'll ask the minister again, will they do the right thing? Will they open a safe consumption site today and help save Manitobans' lives and ensure that these numbers decrease and Manitobans' lives can be saved here in Manitoba?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Community Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and our condolences go out to all families who have lost members to overdose. That is why in 2022, under the Mental Health and Community Wellness, a roadmap was created for improving mental health, substance use, addictions, and programs throughout the province. $17 million was invested to help families and individuals who are seeking the supports they need to ensure that their families were feeling and doing better.
The honourable member for Point Douglas on a final supplementary.
Miigwech, Madam Speaker. If this government was doing better, these numbers would not continue to increase. We wouldn't have more families joining Mom Stop the Harm, coming to this Manitoba Legislature, begging this government to do something to help save their lives, because there's so many that are struggling in our province today. Thankfully, our NDP government was able to stop Bill 33. So many organizations approached us and said what this government doing was bad because it would stop the work of saving lives in Manitobans. So I'll ask the minister again, will she do the right thing? Will she open a safe consumption site here in Manitoba and help save Manitoban lives?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Community Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On this side of the House, we stand up for Manitobans and provide safety for them. Bill 33 was providing safety through providing sites that would assist individuals, vulnerable individuals, to seek the supports they need with medical professions, pathway to recovery, and a continuum of care to ensure that their recovery was long-term.
The honourable member for St. Boniface.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We're more than concerned that the health minister says they haven't read a Manitoba health report from a year ago that states in no uncertain terms that over half of all employees, 2/3 of nurses and half of doctors considered quitting due to burnout. The report spells it out. The current state of employee well-being poses a risk to employees, to patients, and to the health system. Burnout isn't covered, and we've heard directly from people in the system. They want to do their work, but their quitting is an act of professional and personal self-preservation, many after years of wage freezes. Are people who worked for years during this pandemic without a contract being denied their back pay by this government if they resign before October 2022?
The Honourable Minister of Consumer Protection and Government Services.
All right, thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the member finally getting to the point of his question, and certainly we want to ensure that that there's a fair deal reached for all Manitobans, or for all workers within our healthcare system. We want to make sure that that deal is reached as quickly as possible, and our encouragement is for the employer, which is Shared Health, and for the unions to work together at the bargaining table to get that done.
The honourable member for St. Boniface on a supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This government dragged its feet on contracts and froze health wages for years on end in law. The Deloitte report says it drove people to burnout and to quitting. I table a Shared Health memo dated November 3rd, 2022 that makes it clear that retroactive salary increases don't apply to many people who worked in healthcare if they resigned, even if it were due to burnout. Under number 3, who is eligible, it says, and I quote, employees who are no longer employed with an employer organization through resignation or termination as of October 12th, 2022. I heard from a worker today who said they were affected by this. The people who put in the work deserve their full back pay. Why is Shared Health and this government engaged in wage theft? And will they reverse it and make it right?
The Honourable Minister of Consumer Protection and Government Services.
I think the member is clearly confused. He seems to think that the clerk's table is the negotiating table, that he's somehow the union representative, and that I'm somehow shared health. None of those things are true. What we have here is a union negotiation, and it should be allowed to occur at the proper table, not in this legislature. So I appreciate that the member may have a particular concern, and those particular concerns are things that, you know, the union that represents those workers should be representing and should be interested in, and surely they can work together and come up with reasonable plans for all the individuals concerned. That's what a negotiation table is for. That's where negotiation should happen. The member wants to do it here in the chamber, it's not appropriate.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park on a final supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The provincial government has not released any findings related to eating disorders and addictions here in Manitoba. We know the priority needs to be on reducing wait lists and getting people into treatment. As of April 4th, just a few weeks ago, there were 145 clients waiting for an estimated 16 to 18 months for the Women's Health Clinic. And to add to this, Manitoba is one of the few provinces without an eating disorders residential treatment centre. Madam Speaker, when is this government going to bring forward some solutions to address these long wait times, and will the government consider creating a task force with a primary focus on eating disorders and addictions?
The Honourable Minister of Mental Health and Community Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And on this side, we know that investments into eating disorders are very important. We need to provide areas for families to be able to go and seek support for themselves and for the individuals who are. And in February, we invested money, $224,000 into the Child Adolescent Eating Disorder Program at Health Science Centre, $610,000 into the ongoing annual funding expansion of the Adult Eating Disorder Program at Health Science Centre, and $300,000 into the continuing funding support for Provincial Eating Disorder Prevention and Recovery Program. We are supporting family members. There is a lot more that we could do, but we are starting. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Portage-la Prairie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Childcare has been a priority for our government, and I am proud to see real, meaningful change in the industry under the leadership of this Premier and this Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning. This includes $10 a day childcare and many new childcare spaces so that families can find accessible and affordable childcare. Well-trained, dedicated staff are the other part of the equation. Can a Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning elaborate on how our government is helping support early childhood educators?
I bet he can. The Honourable Minister of Education and Early Childhood Learning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my good friend and colleague from Portage-la Prairie for that fantastic question, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is ECE week this week here in Manitoba, Madam Speaker. Early this afternoon, I was happy to announce increased wages for the early childhood education workforce in funded childcare facilities by $56.1 million, Madam Speaker, which will come into effect July 1st, 2023. This increase, on top of last year's increase, totals $93.1 million over 2 years. This PCT, Madam Speaker, is increasing seats. We've made childcare more affordable, and now we are paying proper wages, Madam Speaker. We got more work to do, but we're getting it done, as opposed to that team over there.
The Honourable Member for Notre Dame.
Madam Speaker, as life gets more expensive for working families, we can't ignore gender discrimination on the pay scale. But a new CCPA report released just today suggests that the province lags behind other regions when it comes to legislation holding employers accountable. The data is alarming, and it's going in the wrong direction. Women in Manitoba are paid on average only 71 cents on the dollar when compared to men. Will this PC Premier and her colleagues now join us in support of Bill 228, the Pay Transparency Act, today?
The Honourable Minister for Status of Women.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I do appreciate the member opposite bringing forward a private member's bill, and I was disappointed that she didn't bring it to the Legislature for further debate this morning, especially this morning after receiving that report that shows that there is a widening gap and that we know that economic development for women needs to be a focus. So I look forward to that member bringing that bill back to the Legislature for debate. Meanwhile, our government is committed to advancing women's empowerment through many initiatives. We are funding women in trades. We are funding other economic opportunities, entrepreneurs in the province of Manitoba, and ensuring that all women have the opportunity to achieve their full destiny and succeed in the workforce here in Manitoba.
The Honourable Member for Notre Dame on a supplementary question.
Madam Speaker, I have brought this bill forward twice. It's been rejected twice by that minister and the rest of her colleagues, and I brought this bill forward as early as 3 weeks ago. Madam Speaker, everyone deserves equal pay for equal work, but the pay gap increases even further when factoring other forms of discrimination based on race, age, and ability. In Manitoba, racialized and Indigenous women earn 59 cents and 58 cents for every dollar men earn. Given the abundance of data and the continued lack of progress in closing this pay gap, will this PC government act now and pass Bill 228?
Right on. Good job.
The Honourable Minister for Status of Women.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And it's very disappointing to see that NDP caucus does not have unanimous support for that bill, because otherwise they would have brought it forward for discussion and a debate and a vote right here on the Manitoba Legislature for. But while the member for St. John's continues to shout me down, I would like to tell the House about an important initiative that the Premier and I were at in terms of enhancing women's empowerment earlier today. We are ensuring that we've got opportunities for all women to achieve their destiny, and we're also making sure that our economy grows and that we're lifting women out of poverty by raising the basic personal exemption, expanding the workforce, and creating new opportunities where none existed under the previous NDP government.
The Honourable Member for Notre Dame on a final supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd love to kindly remind this minister that this does not have to be an us and them dynamic. This could be together that we work towards the economic advancement of all women in this province. Madam Speaker, Manitoba used to be a leader in pay equity. Pioneering pay equity legislation was passed right here in the 1980s when it was revealed that women were paid 20 cents less than men in similar jobs. That was wrong then, and it's wrong today. It's now time for Manitoba to be a leader again and address pay discrimination that exists in society, because everyone deserves a fair paycheck. Will the PC government support our bill today?
Right on.
The Honourable Minister for Status of Women.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I look forward to the time when all NDP caucus members can unanimously support pay equity. Like on this side of the House, we all support better jobs, a better economy, and no pay gap and gender discrimination in between women and men. That is why we've worked very hard to ensure that women have a level playing field, including bringing in anti-harassment policies so that women could work free of discrimination, free of harassment, whether they're in the civil servants and being a leader throughout this province, something the NDP never did. They never brought in anti-harassment when they were in government, and they should have. Instead, they told women to shut up and suck it up. That's their record.
The time for oral questions has expired. Petitions. Are there any petitions? The Honourable Member for the Pas-Camissac.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background to this petition is as follows. Number 1, Provincial Road 224 serves Peguis First Nation, Fisher River Cree Nation, and surrounding communities. The road is in need of substantial repairs. Number 2, the road has been in poor condition for years and has numerous potholes, uneven driving surfaces, and extremely narrow shoulders. Number 3, due to recent population growth in the area, there has been increased vehicle and pedestrian use of Provincial Road 224. Number 4, without repair, Provincial Road 224 will continue to pose a hazard to the many Manitobans who use it on a regular basis. Number 5, concerned Manitobans are requesting that Provincial Road 224 be assessed and repaired urgently to improve safety for its users. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the Minister of Infrastructure to complete an assessment of Provincial Road 224 and implement the appropriate repairs using public funds as quickly as possible. Madam Speaker, this petition has been signed by many fine Manitobans.
In accordance with our Rule 133(6), when petitions are read, they are deemed to be received by the House. The Honourable Member for Elmwood.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background of this petition is as follows. Number 1, cities across Canada and the United States, including Chicago, Washington, D.C., Salinas, California, and Orillia, Ontario, are offering home security rebate programs that enhance public safety and allow for a more efficient use of their policing resources. Number 2, home security surveillance systems protect homes and businesses by potentially deterring burglaries, reducing homeowners and business insurance costs. Number 3, home security surveillance systems can also be remotely monitored with personal electronic devices such as smartphones. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to work with municipalities to establish a province-wide tax rebate or other incentive program to encourage residents and businesses to purchase approved home and business security protection systems. This petition is signed by many Manitobans.
The Honourable Member for Point Douglas.
Madam Speaker, I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. The background to this petition is as follows. 1, across the province, many Manitobans continue to struggle with addictions, and the pandemic has led to even more deaths and worsened the ongoing public health crisis of opioid overdose. 2, 372 Manitobans died from an overdose in 2020, and that's over 1 a day and an 87% higher than in 2019. 3, Manitoba is expected to exceed over 400 overdose deaths in 2021, but the data is not publicly available since the last public reporting of opioid deaths was published in 2019. 4, the data for drug overdose deaths from 2020 to 2021 was compiled through media inquiries, and this needs to change. 5, access to timely data on the harms of drugs helps to inform both government and stakeholders on where to take action and targeted resources needed in various communities. 6, Manitoba is the only province not providing regular, timely data to the federal government opioid information portal. 7, Manitobans deserve a government that takes the growing drug crisis seriously and will report the data publicly in a timely manner to target actions and allow for accountability. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to enact Bill 217, the Fatalities Inquiries Amendment Act overdose deaths reporting, to require the province to publish the number of drug overdose deaths as well as the type of drug on a government website in a timely fashion. And this has been signed by Bernard Catchaway, Deneen Patrick, and Tracy Behrens.
The Honourable Member for Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to present the following petition to the Legislative Assembly. To the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba, the background to this petition is as follows. 1, the population of those aged 55 plus has grown to approximately 2,500 in the city of Thompson. 2, a large percentage of those in this age group require medical necessary foot care and treatment. 3, a large percentage of those who are elderly and or diabetic are also living on low incomes. 4, the Northern Regional Health Authority, NRHA, previously provided essential medical foot care services to seniors and those living with diabetes until 2019, then subsequently cut the program after the last 2 nurses filling those positions retired. 5, the number of seniors and those with diabetes has only continued to grow in Thompson and the surrounding areas. 6, there is no adequate medical care available in the city and the region, whereas the city of Winnipeg has 14 medical foot care centers. 7, the implications of inadequate or lack of podiatric care can lead to amputations. Number 8, the city of Thompson also serves as a regional healthcare service provider, and the need of foot care service extends beyond just those served in the capital city of the province. We petition the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba as follows: to urge the provincial government to provide the services to nurses to restore essential medical foot care treatment to the city of Thompson effective April 1st, 2022. This has been signed by many Manitobans.
Any further petitions? If not, grievances? Orders of the day, government business. The Honourable Government House Leader. Oh, the Honourable Member for Elmwood first.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. On House business, in accordance with Rule 1113, Sub 3, I would like to announce that the Standing Committee on Public Accounts will meet in the Chamber on the following dates. 1, Monday, June 5th, 2023, at 1 p.m. to consider the following reports. Province of Manitoba Annual Report and Public Accounts dated March 31, 2022. The Auditor General's Report, Public Accounts and Other Financial Statement Audit dated December 2022. The witness to be called is the Deputy Minister of Finance. Number 2, Tuesday, June 6, 2023 at 1 p.m. to consider the following reports. Auditor General's Report, Aging Information Systems dated February 2022, and the Auditor General's Report, Audit of Information Systems, Privileged Access dated October 2022. The witnesses to be called are Deputy Minister of Consumer Protection and Government Services and the Shared Health CEO. Number 3, on Wednesday, June 7, 2023 at 1 p.m. to consider the following reports. Auditor General's Report, Quarry Rehabilitation Program Investigation dated May 2020. The Auditor General's Report, follow-up of previously issued recommendations dated March 2023, Quarry Rehabilitation Investigation Program. The witness to be called is the Deputy Minister of Economic Development, Investment and Trade.
It has been announced that the following Committee on Public Accounts will meet in the Chamber on the following dates. Monday, June 5th, 2023 at 1 p.m. to consider the following reports. Province of Manitoba Annual Report and Public Accounts dated March 31st, 2022. Auditor General's Report, Public Accounts and Other Financial Statement Audit dated December 2022. The witness to be called is the Deputy Minister of Finance. Tuesday, June 6, 2023 at 1 p.m. to consider the following reports. Auditor General's Report, Aging Information Systems dated February 2022. Auditor General's Report, Audit of Information Systems, Privileged Access dated October 2022. The witnesses to be called are Deputy Minister of Consumer Protection and Government Services, Shared Health CEO. And Wednesday, June 7th, 2022 at 1 p.m. to consider the following reports. Auditor General's Report, Quarry Rehabilitation Program Investigation dated May 2022. Auditor General's Report, follow-up of previously issued recommendations dated March 2023. Quarry Rehabilitation Investigation Program, and the witness to be called is the Deputy Minister of Economic Development, Investment and Trade. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, and I want to commend the member for Elmwood for his historic announcement. I think it's the first time I'm told by the clerk's table that the PAC chair has been able to call the actual PAC meetings as a result of rule changes and the enhancement of our PAC process here in the legislature. So congratulations to the member for Elmwood. Could you please, Madam Speaker, resolve the House into Committee of Supply?
It has been announced that the House will consider estimates this afternoon. This House will now resolve into Committee of Supply. Mr. Deputy Speaker, please take the chair.
Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now resume consideration of the estimates for the Department of Justice. At this time, we invite Ministerial and Opposition staff to enter the chamber, and the Minister and the critic are both welcome to introduce their staff in attendance. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. To my left is the remarkably talented Maria Campos, and immediately in front of me is the superbly skilled Marty McNichol, and to my right is the fantastically intelligent Deputy Minister Jeremy Akerman. Akerstream. Akerstream.
As previously noted, questioning for the department will proceed in a global manner. The floor is now open for questions. The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Of course, the Minister will be very well aware of issues that have taken place at Health Sciences Centre recently, and concerns from nurses, well, really at a number of healthcare facilities, but in particular Health Sciences Centre, with regards to their safety coming to and from work. One of the commitments, 2019, I believe the bill was passed in this legislature, was to establish the ISOs, institutional safety officers. What is the Minister's plan on following through on that 4-year-old promise to establish those institutional safety officers at healthcare facilities?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank the member for the question. Yes, the Department of Justice committed to developing an institutional safety officer program and to train individuals, and that has occurred.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
How many institutional safety officers are currently working at Health Sciences Centre?
The Honourable Minister.
That would be a question I think the member would have to ask the either Shared Health or the Department of Health, but the Department of Justice doesn't employ health employees.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
I would hope that the Minister would have more interest in supporting a program that his department created and promoted and talked about and lauded as being such an important part of their overall safety strategy. We just had committee last night. Of course, community safety officers is the next level in terms of this sort of support for communities, and yet we're hearing from them they haven't seen any additional dollars, any additional supports. Once again, it sounds more like just words rather than actual action. So how can anyone have any kind of confidence that the Minister will follow through on those community safety officers when he hasn't, his department, he doesn't seem to care one bit that nurses in our province are feeling unsafe going to and from work, and the program that he created is not functioning right now at Health Sciences Centre and other institutional safety facilities.
The Honourable Minister.
Well, the member, of course, is incorrect. We have a great concern anytime anybody, including nurses, doesn't feel safe in Manitoba. That's a significant concern for those who work in justice, as it is for the government as a whole. The member opposite asked about the commitment to develop an ISO program and whether or not, and labeled it as an unfulfilled promise. Of course, he was wrong, because it was a commitment to develop an ISO program. The program was developed. There have been dozens of individuals who've been trained, who are working in institutions. The member wants to ask about employees that are outside the Department of Justice. That would include at the universities where there are ISOs. That would include at hospitals where there has been training of regarding ISOs. He would have to ask those departments. So it's not anything other than he needs to ask the questions in the right place. If he wants to ask the question about how many folks are employed in the Department of Highways, he would have to ask the Department of Highways. If he wants to know how many people are employed in the education system, he would normally go either to the school divisions, who are the actual employers, or if they're employed through the Department of Education, that's where he would go. But he's asking how many health employees are employed in the Department of Justice, which is just not the place to ask. But in terms, he did properly ask about the training program, because Justice does provide training, and the ISO training program is operating and graduating individuals.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Well, the level of indifference that this minister has for the safety of nurses is quite astounding, and I'm quite surprised that he would be unwilling to undertake this in a more serious way, considering that the minister, as I said, lauded this as being a solution to keeping our healthcare workers safe. The minister may know, or he may not know, that there was an incident recently at HSC that was in the news just this past week, I believe, or this week I should say, regarding a patient that turned violent while waiting in the ER. These are serious concerns for our healthcare workers, for other patients who are using our healthcare facilities. Has the minister himself been involved in any discussions about hiring institutional safety officers at our healthcare facilities?
The Honourable Minister.
Obviously, we do have a concern about safety of those who are in institutions, both working or seeking care at the institutions. The member will know, for example, that the health authorities do things such as have contracts with security companies across the province. I know in my own community of Steinbach, if I'm visiting or attending the hospital, excuse me, in Steinbach, there are security officers that are stationed at the front, but they're not employees of the Department of Justice. They're employees, I guess in that case, of Southern Health. Excuse me again. However, he's asking questions regarding whether the Department of Justice is I guess hiring security in schools, or hiring security in hospitals, or hiring securities in Walmart. I'm not sure how far he wants to extend this in terms of where the Department of Justice is hiring security officers. Just for his clarity, the Department of Justice is responsible for enabling the program for training. That would be true for CSOs as well. As I mentioned yesterday at committee, the CSOs will be trained through the Department of Justice, and there'll be training standards. Good work, of course, in terms of uniform standards with Devon Clunas. But if he's suggesting then that the bus safety unit that is envisioned by Mayor Gillingham, that those would be employees of the Department of Justice, I'm just not sure how far he wants to extend that. If he's looking for security guards, maybe he didn't say it, but maybe he's suggesting that there be security guards in schools, and he wants those to be then employees of the Department of Justice, because it's then related to a safety issue. Is he looking to have Justice have employed people in malls or different sorts of things to have that security? He seems to be interested in having the Department of Justice hire and have all of these as employees in all of these different places. So that's actually not the function. The function of the Department of Justice is to do the training and to establish programs where there can be training, and that has happened when it comes to the ISO program. So he mischaracterizes, likely purposely, as an unfulfilled promise. Well, the promise from the Department of Justice and previous ministers of justice was to develop a program for ISOs. That's happened. There's been training. There have been institutions that have chosen to use that training, both health facilities and post-secondary educational institutions. So he's aware, those that took the training and that are now at the University of Manitoba, they're not employees of the Department of Justice either, although I suppose maybe he wants them to be the employees of the Department of Justice. He hasn't asked any questions about the safety of students, so maybe that's not a concern to him. I don't know. It just seems to be like the member seems focused on trying to get, I guess, the department to have security officers in all sorts of different institutions. So maybe he can provide a list of where he wants the Department of Justice to have employees in different places. Again, and maybe he can explain why he hasn't asked any questions about the ISOs at the University of Manitoba and why those aren't employees of the Department of Justice. So he can just give some clarity, because I'm not quite sure what the member's expectations.
The honourable member for Concordia.
Again, I think that this minister's flippant answers speak volumes to the nurses in our healthcare system, to the healthcare workers, talking about Walmart and going completely off the rails. You know, the minister's quite eager every time he stands up in question period in the media to talk about specifics at the University of Manitoba or other universities, and yet when asked a simple question, and maybe the minister didn't hear it, maybe he missed it, he can go back and answer it and read it, but I'll ask it again. I'm asking if the minister has met with the health authority, with Shared Health. Has he met with anybody about the lack of implementation or hiring under this ISO program? And does he care? We're just trying to get some reassurance from the minister that this is a priority of this government and it's not just more cheap talk.
The honourable minister.
Yeah, it's absolutely a priority, which is why the Department of Justice developed the ISO program and the training for it through training providers. I'll remind the member that never happened under the former government, and there were concerns about safety at hospitals and other facilities at that time too. Not only did they not make them employees of the Department of Justice, but they didn't even institute a training program. So yes, the commitment was to develop a training program for institutional safety officers. The program was developed. There have been individuals trained both in the healthcare sector and in the post-secondary sector for institutional safety officers. So the member just doesn't want to accept, I suppose, that the Department of Justice has fulfilled that commitment, and there'll be more ISOs trained. If he has questions, though, about employees in health, he seems to have missed his opportunity, and maybe that is frustrating to him that he couldn't get a question or wasn't aware that health was in estimates previously. This seems to be a pattern maybe with the member. He was upset that he couldn't get questions on MPI, even though there was just a Crown Corporation Committee a few months ago where his leader asked questions, a number of questions, I think, regarding Project Nova, and I don't recall if the member opposite was able to ask questions or maybe just chose not to, but now he has some sort of regret that he didn't ask questions at Crown Corporations, and he has regret that he didn't ask questions in the Department of Health, but I would encourage him, if he's interested in the great work being done at Health and the employees at Health, then he might want to look at that. I know, as an example, there have been security contracts that have been issued by the Department of Health, not last year, I think. They were relative to a number of different health institutions. He might now come back and ask me for the details of those. I only know them because I saw it in the paper, but they're not employees of the Department of Justice. Health employees are generally the employees of a regional health authority or, in smaller situations, the Department of Health.
Honourable member for Concordia.
Once again, that answer would be very disappointing to healthcare workers who are feeling unsafe. I'd like to ask the Minister about bail reform. This has certainly been an item, again, that the Minister's been very eager to talk about with regards to changes at the federal level. What I'd like to ask the Minister, get a little bit more detail about what actions he's taken with regards to his own authorities to enhance bail enforcement under the current federal rules. In terms of enforcement, what steps has the Minister actually taken to enhance or strengthen bail enforcement in this province?
The Honourable Minister.
It's a very good question. I thank the member for bringing that topic up. It was probably summer of last year where officials and I identified the concern around bail, and this was before a lot of, or really most provinces were speaking about it. I think British Columbia at that time were raising issues around bail and concern about it. We raise it in the context of individuals who are violent offenders, sometimes using bear spray, sometimes using edged or bladed weapons, then receiving bail and then committing another crime. And some of that, by the way, came about because Winnipeg Police Service raised issues around bear spray and then subsequently around bail. So we started talking about it at that time last summer, and then we had the opportunity to meet as Ministers of Justice together with the Federal Minister of Justice and Minister of Public Safety in Halifax for the FPT, for the Federal Provincial Territorial meeting. And there was a lot of different things on the agenda, but the member might remember from his time in government. I know he wasn't in cabinet, but he would probably heard this from some of his colleagues. You know, there's an opportunity then, there's an agenda at these FPTs, but there's an opportunity to raise other issues as well. So we had asked for a bail to be on the agenda, Manitoba did, and we brought it up. And the dynamic of these FPTs is usually you'll get, if you're lucky, you get a consensus of provinces who agree on something, but generally you almost never get unanimity from provinces. So when we raised the issue about bail, very quickly British Columbia came alongside and supported that call. They had some of their own specific concerns about bail, and then we ran around the table, and every province, every Minister of Justice or Attorney General or Public Safety Minister, if the provinces had them, they all expressed their concern about bail. So much so that the then federal minister, or the current federal Minister of Justice and Minister of Public Safety, said, we're gonna call a special meeting on bail coming out of that meeting in Halifax because there was unanimity around the table. Now, I know there's not even unanimity in the NDP caucus on this issue. The member for Fort Garry, as an example, has spoken up very strongly about bail reform, doesn't think there should be bail reform. He tweeted about it. I know the tweet was deleted, but people were able to capture it, so we still have it recorded. And so there's not unanimity even in the NDP caucus, but there was unanimity around Canada about the importance of bail reform. And so then fast forward to March 10th in Ottawa, and there's a special meeting on bail reform. Provinces, weren't quite sure what the federal government would be proposing. They called us to Ottawa for that. Minister Lametti and Minister Mendicino both appeared at that particular meeting and recommended that there be criminal code reform before the end of this parliamentary session, and so that hopefully within 4 or 5 weeks. And that bail be changed and be tighter, more restrictive, a reverse onus essentially for repeat violent offenders, which would, I think importantly, capture those who are using bear spray or using edged weapons in the Manitoba context. So that would provide a reverse onus for repeat violent offenders. Now, that was good. That, by the way, that was echoed by the premiers and the chiefs of police just last week. So I just wanted not to be too political about this, but it's important to recap now that you've got the chiefs of police, all the premiers, the federal Minister of Justice, the federal Minister of Public Safety, all calling for the same thing, except for the provincial NDP. And that's a really interesting contrast. So I appreciate the member's question, but I might ask him one back. And what is he doing to try to convince his own caucus, particularly his member for Fort Garry, but others, because the member for Fort Garry often says out loud what the NDP caucus just thinks privately. But like, what is he doing to convince his caucus that this is actually an important issue and there needs to be stronger and tighter bail, and not, as the member for Fort Garry says, even less restrictive bail provisions?
The honourable member for Concordia.
Wow, that was a masterclass in spending 5 minutes not answering a question, a very specific question. He seems to be so concerned about this issue and yet can't even answer the question, can't tell us one thing that Manitoba is doing here about bail enforcement. It's quite concerning. I think it's no wonder our province is seeing such an uptick in violent crime and in pressures on our justice system. This minister is all talk, no action once again. And he wants to make a political point, but people are actually asking for action. So it's very disappointing. I will move on, Mr. Chair, to ask questions about Project Nova at MPI. I did indicate to the minister that we would spend, well, I told him yesterday, but of course there was a bit of a delay in our timing. So we're going to move right into it today, and hopefully he's had a chance to consult his officials and look into this program a little bit more. We would be very much interested in getting some details with regards to money already spent and money now committed to the project. Minister, as I mentioned yesterday, I would know that there is on page 39 of this year's supplement to the estimates of expenditure in Manitoba Justice a line item with regards to Project Nova. Can the minister explain why there's a change from last year to this year in terms of MPI's self-financing these capital investments now, which we presume includes that information technology upgrade?
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't actually want to point this out because I feel bad for the member. I thought maybe it was a mistake. So the province actually announced last year some new programs and stronger programs for those who are out on bail or release. In fact, it was at the just outside the Human Rights Museum at the Forks. There was police officers from the WPS, the RCMP, the Brandon Police Service. In fact, there was a front page article in the Winnipeg Free Press. There was news releases. There was editorials that came after that. As a result, the Winnipeg Police Service spoke in favor. The Brandon Police Service has spoken in favor. The RCMP spoke in favor. And I didn't want to mention that because I thought the member probably would have seen that, and I wasn't trying to point out that maybe he hadn't. But I guess now I have no choice but to acknowledge that the member must have missed that really, really big and significant announcement. Now, in fairness to the member, because I like the member for Concordia, he wasn't the justice critic at the time. I don't believe. I think he was still the critic for finance, health, not for justice anyway. So he may not have been paying attention. So I acknowledge that. I'm not trying to suggest he's not doing his work. I find him to be a diligent MLA with thoughtful questions. But because he wasn't the minister or the critic for justice at the time, he may not have seen that announcement. But it's easy. He could simply Google it. And he'll see that there was lots of different news releases. There was lots of different commentary by the police showing the different programs that we have that are enhancing bail supervision, both for the female population, for others who are out on bail. There'll be more announcements, by the way. I can't tell him about those yet, but I want him to actually be alert to this now because he missed the last one. So he should, be finally tuned into the next few weeks where he'll hear more announcements. But yes, if he goes back to look at the announcement, the really, really large and well-publicized announcement last year, he'll be able to get all of that information, and he might want to share that then with his colleagues who might also not have seen that at the time.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Once again, can the Minister explain why there's a change from last year to this year in terms of MPI self-financing and of these capital investments now, which we presume includes information technology?
The Honourable Minister.
In terms of MPI and capital, there hasn't been, I'm told by officials, any change in how capital is funded from MPI to the government. The numbers might change because the nature of the capital changes. He'll remember under his government, under his watch, MPI purchased City Place, I believe. And so there might have been some capital repairs to City Place, and so maybe that's why there's different numbers, but there's no actual change in terms of that. He asked about Project Nova, though, in a previous question, and I just want to remind him, this came up at Crown Corporations in December. I think his leader was asking some questions about this, but we reiterated, I think that the CEO reiterated at the time that there is no more funds, additional funds that will be provided by government for Project Nova. There's no more funds anticipated to be needed by MPI, and we understand that the timelines for the program rollout are on time. And in fact, there was a first phase that was rolled out a few months ago with Project Nova. So there's already some rollouts happening. I suspect there might be more happening in the summer, but no additional money is being provided through government, and no additional requests are being anticipated by MPI, and the project, we understand, is on time. So I hope that gives the member some assurance. I know he's asking these questions from the right place, and because he also, I'm sure, would have concerns, as I did, with cost overruns, and so in that way we have agreement and we have accord.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
So was that line item all the funding that was provided in 22-23 for Project Nova?
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, I thank the member for the question. I'm learning a bit too, just in terms of the presentations of the books. And so MPI is entirely self-funded, so it's not being funded through government, but for the purpose of transparency, they now prefer to present it on the books as the money essentially coming in and then going out, but the money is self-funded by MPI through their operations, but it's presented so that there's transparency, but it's not money coming from the core of government to fund capital. So nor would it all be for Project Nova. It would be for whatever capital needs that MPI has, and I included as one example the City Place, but there could be others too.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
So let's break that number out then. How much of that, I guess it was $87 million this year, $76 million this year, $87 million last year. Out of those 2 years, how much was for, as the Minister said, City Place, how much was flowed through for Project Nova?
Honourable Minister.
I don't want to overpromise for the member because we don't have full access to MPI's books here because this isn't the Crown Corporations Committee, and the member will have had opportunity to ask these questions in December, or the critic at the time. I can't remember if it was him or not. But I'm told we did have that number, and there was 57 million provided for Project Nova, not from government, but from MPI in 22-23, and an additional 57 million in 23-24.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
And I think we were referencing, I know that may be, okay, that may be the question that I asked. I'm just trying to get my dates correct here. So $57 million is the baseline for Nova for each year, I think I heard the minister say. So the question I have then is, is that the total number then of the cost overrun so far that have been tallied up to date currently, or is there additional money that's been flowed through this department as per the estimates book that would also be tagged for Nova?
Honourable Minister.
There's no other additional money being supplemented through the department.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
And the latest undertaking of this government was to, issue an untendered contract for an outside consultant to come in to try to get a handle on the mess over at MPI under this minister's direction. Is that number captured in this under this line item, or would this be somewhere else in the estimates book here?
The Honourable Minister.
The government hasn't issued an untendered contract.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
About the undertaking that the minister has publicly stated will be I think he's calling it a ministerial inquiry. Where is the line item in the estimates that would capture the costs related to that?
The Honourable Minister.
So it's not an untendered contract. It'll be a tendered contract. It's an organizational review, not a ministerial inquiry, but it came from a ministerial directive that is allowed for under the Crown Corporations Act. And so the ministerial directive was that the Manitoba Public Insurance undertake an organizational review. So it'll be a tendered contract that'll be through MPI.
Honourable Member for Concordia.
So if I can understand this correctly, then this is a ministerial directive. However, the minister's department or office wouldn't be directly then responsible for the funds to pay for that inquiry. That comes directly out of MPI.
The Honourable Minister.
That's correct.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Okay, and then so what are the cost estimates for this ministerial inquiry? And is that, we're now told the latest number is $290 million for the project, so about $200 million over budget. Is that included in that number, that 290, or would that bump it up north of $300 million?
The Honourable Minister.
The number of that's been projected for Project Nova since last year has not changed. I don't know the cost of the organizational review because it hasn't come back from tender. When the tenders come back and contracts issued, after that competition, I'll be able to provide that to the member. But I think he's making the mistake that I think it's happened in some of the media as well, so this isn't particular to the member, that the review, the organizational review, isn't specific to Project Nova. There's been reviews done on Project Nova. It's been rescoped. There's an assurance by the corporation that the budget for Project Nova is not going to change. We will hold the corporation to that assurance. They've indicated that it's on time. The organization review was not sparked by Project Nova. It's not in the absence of concerns around Project Nova, but less perhaps about costs and more about accountability. There were concerns that were raised by the PUB about financial reporting. Member will know that the rate applications that went in from MPI into the PUB, they were quite different between what was being asked for by the corporation and what the PUB ultimately offered, or directed, I should say, because the PUB has responsibility for that. There were concerns about the financial reporting. The PUB itself asked for some particular directives on that. I've been very public about saying my concerns about the desire of the corporation to hire, I believe, 400 employees, at a time when there were, these other concerns. I've been very public about my concerns about untendered contracts, which, by the way, happened significantly under the NDP, and the NDP did nothing about it. But I did take action on that because I was concerned. So I know what the member's trying to do, and I don't think out of any sort of malice, but he's maybe looking at news reports and trying to link the organizational review as directly a review of Project Nova, and it's not. And so the costs wouldn't be appropriated to Project Nova because it's an organizational review that has about a lot of concerns about financial reporting, the reliability of certain financial numbers, the management structure, the employee makeup, concerns about, we talked about untendered contracts. So it is not a review about Project Nova specifically.
The honourable member for Concordia.
Okay, so that is clear. I appreciate that. So the additional money that will be required for this organizational review will be above and beyond the $290 million already budgeted for Project Nova. I understand that the RFP closes May 18th. The House doesn't rise until June. Can the minister commit to reporting back to the House the cost for this organizational review?
The Honourable Minister.
The cost of the organizational review will be made public, as they always are, but they are not attributable to Project Nova. I can see where the member is going. He's going to try to suggest that this is a cost overrun to Project Nova. I will repeat, this is not specifically related to Project Nova. And by the way, so he doesn't think I'm sort of into some sort of revisionist history here, I've made my concerns, probably more than ministers have been responsible for MPI have in the past, public about the concerns that I have about certain things with MPI. And so the member might be criticizing me at some point in the next 5 or 10 minutes about interfering with MPI, but I had concerns, and so we have issued 2 directives that were related to that and made other public comments that I thought were concerning regarding, and they were echoing what the PUB had said as well. So these are not costs that are attributable to Project Nova. Even if Project Nova had never occurred, my same concerns would have arisen about other issues that would have still sparked an organizational review.
The honourable member for Concordia.
No, we got it. This is in addition to the $290 million that Project Nova is costing. I understand the minister saying it's separate. I guess the point that I'm getting to or making sure I understand is that ratepayers at MPI are on the hook for this organizational review, for the mess that's happening over at MPI. Question with regards to that $290 million figure. Once again, trying to understand the untendered contract that was awarded to McKinsey. Would that have been captured in that $290 million budget that's been laid out to this point, or is that over and above the 290 that's been publicly disclosed?
The Honourable Minister.
That's a question he'd have to bring to Crown Corporations, to MPI directly.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Well, I think this is, again, speaks to the fact that, you know, there's a lot of questions over what's going on at MPI, and you know, we don't have much faith in the minister bringing this information forward in another venue. So this is the opportunity for him to clear the air, put it all out there, you know, so to speak, lay his cards on the table. If he's serious about making things right at MPI, this would be his opportunity. And we know, of course, that $290 million was advertised over a number of years. It's you know, a major upgrade to the systems at MPI, but of course these untendered contracts that have been issued, this additional money that's been flowed through, this isn't advertised money. This is money in this year's budget. This is money that is being spent by ratepayers of MPI on this government's mismanagement. So I think he needs to be clear. And I mean, I gave him fair warning. This would be an opportunity for him to clear the air. So here's his opportunity. Simply get it out on the table, because I think that, you know, he might feel better. His conscience might be, you know, cleared if he comes clean about where things are at now. We can start talking about what the implications are for ratepayers going forward. But I think he should be clear about how much this is costing Manitobans right now.
The Honourable Minister.
My conscience is quite clear. I sleep quite well. The member opposite, now it's the second day he's worried about my health. I talked to him about heartburn yesterday and the potential to use Nexium if he's suffering from that. Melatonin is a good natural aid for sleep deprivation if the member needs some help. He's having difficulty with his conscience and not sleeping well at night. So that's 2 bits of health advice that I've been able to give him in 2 days. But I do really want to welcome him to the estimates for the Department of Justice. And the estimates for the Department of Justice are before him. He knows that there's the line item of self-funded money from MPI coming in or coming out, but to remind him again, the structure by which this assembly works, and he's not a new member, he's been both in government and in opposition, and I think before that he was a senior advisor to the former NDP Premier Gary Doer, who, by the way, I think tried to take $21 million out of MPI and give it to universities when the member for Concordia was an advisor to Gary Doer. But we can explore that at another time. But I want to remind him that the structure by which this assembly works is that the core of government and the expenditures from the core of government are appearing in the estimates books, and that he's free on a global basis to ask questions as they relate to the expenditures of the core of government. And then there are outside reporting entities, OREs, which consist of things like Hydro and MPI and Centennial Corporation and Liquor and Lotteries, and the financials of those corporations are brought in on a summary basis. This was changed by the NDP a few different times depending on how well Hydro was doing, and they were trying to falsify the books of the government. But in this government, the expenditures get summarized into the government, but the operations of those outside reporting entities are separate. Not, I don't run MPI on a day-to-day basis. So that's why you have Crown Corporation's committees for Hydro, for MPI, for MLCC, and for the Centennial Corporation. And then members can, for hours, ask questions of the officials. The most recent one for MPI was in December, I believe, not that long ago. It might feel a long time ago. but it wasn't that long ago, where the leader of the official opposition asked a number of different questions as it related to MPI. And that is the opportunity for those type of questions. This is the Department of Justice. Now, this would be similar in the Department of Health, and I lived that life for a while, is the Minister of Health. I know the member opposite, I think, was the critic for health at that time for a while, and he might have come and asked questions in the Department of Health about expenditures at the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. Now, sometimes, we were able, because health often was in estimates for days, if not weeks, and so sometimes we maybe were able to circle back and get some of those answers, but you have to ask the questions to the right authorities. So, we might be able to go and get some of these, or there's other avenues a member can ask. But I just wanted to give him that really brief overview of how the Legislative Assembly and its finances work. I've never been the finance minister. I've been on Treasury Board. I've been around now in large departments, so I have an idea of how this all pieces together. And if I've said it wrong, some official somewheres will send me a text and correct me. But I think that generally is how it works. So if he wants to bring these forward to the Crown Corporations Committee of MPI, he certainly will have that opportunity in the statutory, and it is statutory. Because former government never used to call Crown Corporations. So it's statutory. It has to be called so and so many times in a certain period of time, and he'll have that opportunity again. And I hope he avails himself of that.
The honourable member for Concordia.
You're damn right someone asked these questions at a Crown Corporations meeting, but it's at the minister's discretion to call that, and of course he's not willing to do that.
Order.
He also knows, the minister also
Order.
knows
I'm just
that...
going to interrupt the member. Just want to issue a gentle reminder about parliamentary language in the chamber here. The member the honourable member for Concordia may continue.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. I'm usually better at that, having young children. I usually throw in a good darn every now and again, but that's about usually as far as it goes. But I guess this does get me a little fired up, because the people of Manitoba are on the hook here for this minister's mismanagement at MPI. And, the minister knows, of course, that the questions we're asking are perfectly within scope. We're talking about page 39 of his department's estimates books. He's already put on the record that we're talking about $57 million last year and $57 million this year that's already been flowed with regards to Project Nova. Our concern, of course, is that the costs are already over $200 million over budget. However, we also know that that's only the project costs so far. That's not even the full amount that are estimated. And the numbers that we're hearing at this point are closer to $500 million that Manitobans may be on the hook for. We've heard concerns about how the project, even at this point, is collapsing under its own weight, and the decisions made early on by this government have handicapped that project, and will force it again to near that $500 million mark. Are those the numbers that the minister is also hearing? And so can we expect that $57 million that's been allocated in this year's estimates books to go up next year, and the year after, and the year after that, and the year after that?
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, and I appreciate both your caution, Mr. Chairperson, and the member, my friend from Concordia, withdrawing his unparliamentary language. I'm sure that his kids are part of the 20 who are watching the committee today, and they would have been mortified for the moment, but now proud of their dad that he took back the comments that he put on the record. He did the right thing by doing that. Just to correct a couple of things, however, he referenced the $57 million, and if I heard him correctly, he indicated that the money had flowed. It's budgeted money, but it would not necessarily have flowed or been spent. And that's true for previous fiscal year and the current fiscal year, because the books haven't closed on the previous fiscal year. So just small correction that the money wasn't necessarily spent, but it was budgeted for. I think I did advise him at the beginning of this sort of line of questioning, in addition to a couple days ago when he indicated he was going to be starting down with it, that we just have limited access to some of the information from MPI, which is why we have a Crown Corporations committee. I think maybe what's happening is he's probably, because his leader, I believe, did ask a lot of questions at Crown Corporations on Project Nova, and at that time in December, I believe it was already known that the budget had gone up. So he probably is expressing disappointment in the questions that were asked, maybe by the leader of the opposition. Doesn't feel they were good questions, or maybe not as specific as he would have liked. I sometimes feel that way about the leader of the official opposition too. I sometimes think, boy, those weren't the best questions, and so in that way, I feel for the member opposite if that's his concern and that's his frustration. But I mean, not to delay things too much. I understand from officials who were able to discern through the technology that exists that the McKinsey contract at which he refers is included in the budgeted amount of Project Nova.
The honourable member for Concordia.
Well, the minister continues to be cavalier about the fact that $57 million has flowed through. A total of $290 million is the public figure so far. But again, the question was more about the final cost, the final cost to ratepayers at MPI. As I said, we're hearing that this is with regards to the current project. I think the minister would be aware of that, and that in order to complete the project, which is quite a ways off yet, this is already years over past its due date, those costs are only going up to even complete the project. Again, what we're hearing is potentially $500 million that will be expended on this project to get it complete. And maybe the minister wants to refute that today. I encourage him to do so. If I've got the wrong information, let us know if this will not be a project that will end up costing Manitobans even more than $290 million, as is public so far.
The honourable minister.
Yeah, I've already indicated to the member that government has indicated that there would not be any approval for additional expenditures on Project Nova other than what was budgeted and already discussed at Crown Corporations Committee last year. Of course, some of the Project Nova initiatives have already started to roll out. I understand that there'll be more that'll be rolling out in the summer. The member, I guess, can throw numbers around and without any, he didn't table anything, he didn't sort of indicate where he was hearing anything from. So I suppose that maybe that's what opposition does. He used to actually accuse us of that when we were in opposition, because I remember, I'm old enough to remember there was a time when the NDP, we used to say that the building of the third bipole line on the west side of the province, as opposed to the east side of the province, wouldn't cost taxpayers 1 cent. That's actually a quote. Yep. He literally said, well, not him in particular, but the NDP government literally said it wouldn't cost one additional penny for taxpayers. And when we would suggest in the House as opposition at that time that just wasn't true, because it made no sense, right? I mean, you were moving a hydro line, from northern Manitoba, towards the Saskatchewan border, then almost paralleling the Saskatchewan border and then pulling it back into southern Manitoba. It now runs through the arm of Hanover and then back up towards Winnipeg to get to the converter station, as opposed to that almost direct line down the east side of, it made no sense that it wouldn't cost any additional penny. And it turns out, this is now we can look back and we know it to be true. It turns out that not only was it an additional penny, it was an additional $4 billion. $4 billion. And when you talk about the PUB and the cost to certain things, I mean, we know what the PUB indicated that the hydro rate increase should be this year. It was only because of the good work of this government by reducing water rental rates and other fees that are paid by Manitoba Hydro that cut that projected rate increase in half. So the member opposite can throw about a number without any evidence, without any indication of where he's heard it from, but he does so without credibility based on his own track record in the former government. When he clapped and shouted with great glee from the government benches when government members said that the hydro line wouldn't cost one additional penny. I've made it clear as the minister responsible for MPI that government will not provide or approve additional funds for Project Nova. I've been given assurance by MPI officials that they won't be seeking additional funds for Project Nova, and that the cost of the project, or that the timeline for the project, is on time. Now, if the member opposite has evidence to the contrary, as opposed to allegations, I absolutely would welcome him providing that evidence.
The honourable member for Concordia.
I look forward to doing so. Is the minister indicating then that if the cost for Project Nova exceed $290 million, that he is willing to walk away from this project?
The honourable minister.
Government has indicated that we will not be approving it, and this is through Treasury Board officials, will not be approving additional funding for Project Nova, and Manitoba Public Insurance has indicated that they will not be seeking additional funds.
The honourable member for Concordia.
Aha, so we figured that one out. That took a little while to understand what the minister was saying. So essentially what I'm hearing the minister say is that there's no additional money coming from his government, which earlier on he said there was no money that came from government with regards to MPI. MPI is self-funded. So what he's saying is there will be no money from government, but of course the taxpayer, there's only one taxpayer, I'll remind the minister, and that taxpayer, that ratepayer for MPI, potentially could be on the hook for whatever it costs to complete the project. Unless the minister is willing, because he's so eager to get involved in the day-to-day at MPI, is he willing to direct MPI that they should walk away from the project if the costs exceed $290 million, which is already over budget?
The honourable minister.
Well, it's just after 4 o'clock, and the member has now accused me of interfering too much at a Crown corporation after spending about 2 months accusing me of not interfering enough. I thought it might take us till 4:30 before we got to the flip-flop, but I appreciate him getting there a bit earlier. No, he once again is not understanding the process by which government finances work. Maybe that's why they got into the problem of a $4 billion over expenditure with the bipolar line at Manitoba Hydro. What I've indicated to the member before, because Crown corporations now appear before Treasury Board and they have to have their expenditures approved, and it's been indicated that there would not be additional expenditures approved by the government, which would not allow it to happen.
The honourable member for Concordia.
How many times has the minister met with the CEO of MPI in the last 6 months?
The honourable minister.
Many times.
The honourable member for Concordia.
It sounds like it. Can the minister give me a number?
The honourable minister.
The number is many.
The honourable member for Concordia.
Sorry, I didn't hear the minister.
The honourable minister.
Many.
The honourable member for Concordia.
pretty sure many is not a number. Can the minister tell me how many times he has met with the CEO of MPI in the last 6 months?
The Honourable Minister.
So many that I don't have the number on me.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Well, as we're getting used to, the minister has come unprepared to committee, so maybe he could undertake that to get that number, bring it back to us.
The Honourable Minister.
How many times has the member opposite met with his leader of the opposition in the last 4 months? Does he have that number on him?
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
So I think this is a pretty straightforward question for the minister. I'm not sure why he's refusing to answer. Can he just maybe look at his schedule, talk to his scheduling secretary? Might be a good option. I'm not going to tell him how to do his job, but maybe he should, I don't know, ask somebody that knows a little bit more than him. That might be a good way to do it.
The Honourable Minister.
Well, see, but that's a different sort of thing, because when I asked the member opposite how many times he'd met with the leader of the opposition, I actually thought he might know, because it's probably close to zero. But my hope is that he meets with him so often that he wouldn't know the number off the top of his head, in the same way that I don't know the number off the top of my head. So if he's asking to, to try to discern a number of how many times, we've been meeting, perhaps he wants to give a time frame. But he might also have to be more clear, because, I run into the CEO sometimes at events, and we've talked about things. I've seen him at announcements. There was a Christmas gathering, I think, that I saw him at last year. In fact, now that the member opposite mentions it, I was at the ATA, the Association of Trades, the Automobile Trades Association. Thanks, Marty. At their President's Dinner on Saturday of this last week. Great dinner. Want to commend all those who were involved. In fact, it's the first, the member will be upset if I don't mention this, it's the first time they've had a President's Dinner since 2008. And so Johnny Vernas and others were instrumental in organizing it, and I want to commend them for that. Really a full room of folks in the industry who were there, and recognize a number of people who were introduced into the Hall of Fame of the ATA, including Jim Gauthier, the big guy. You remember from the commercials, there were some who were too young at this table to remember Jim Gauthier in the commercials, including Jeremy, who just wouldn't recall that. But the big guy was there. He received an award. A number of others received a recognition for their awards in the ATA. But the reason I say that is because the CEO of MPI was there and spoke at the event. So I don't know if he would include that as a meeting of the CEO. Maybe he could just give a little bit more clarity in terms of what he's looking for.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
So the question was, in the last 6 months, how many times has the minister met with the CEO of MPI?
The Honourable Minister.
Sure. So when, just in terms of meetings, does he mean like when we were at a Christmas function together, or when we were at the ATA? Does he want that included as well?
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Sure, that's at the minister's discretion if he thinks those were meetings that should be included in the public record.
The Honourable Minister.
So I'll do my best then to remember every hockey game I may have run into the CEO at, or anytime. It'll definitely be many, but we'll endeavor to get that to the member in the prescribed period required.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
So, and in these number of discussions that the minister, it sounds like it's very often that he's meeting with the CEO of MPI. Has he given him any kind of direction or raised any concerns prior to him calling a ministerial inquiry into the organizational structure of MPI?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, I mean, the specific nature of those meetings would not be appropriate for me to speak about, but I can assure the member that I wouldn't call for an organizational review without having raised concerns previously about a number of different issues.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Well, I mean, it's clear that the minister is certainly well briefed on the situation at MPI. Obviously, would be well briefed on the situation with regards to Project Nova, the cost overruns, the delays that have occurred so far. Did the minister also get information at that time with regards to the turnover in the executive suite in MPI's management?
The Honourable Minister.
I'm not sure the exact definition that the member is using when it comes to executive management. I don't have specific information about turnover rates of whatever the definition he's using, because we're not operating the Crown Corporation. But do I sometimes hear when individuals leave a corporation? Sure, but I also hear sometimes when people leave, the staff of the NDP caucus, but I'm not controlling that either.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Can he advise the committee how many executives have left in the past 2 years?
The Honourable Minister.
No, and that would be a question more appropriate for Crown Corporations Committee.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Well, as I've said, I'm happy to ask those questions there as well, and I look forward to the minister bringing that forward. I'm looking for a list of executives that have left their titles and the date that they left, and whether they have been replaced. Again, if we want to stay out of the realm of the Crown Corporations process, because of course the minister, I think, has been pretty clear he's not willing to call a Crown Corporations meeting. Maybe the minister can just talk about the times that he's been briefed by the CEO at MPI over the presumably dozens and dozens of meetings that he's had with the CEO over the last 6 months. What sort of information has he received from him about executives that have left in the last 2 years?
The Honourable Minister.
I think I indicated to the member that I would try to discern how many times I've met with the CEO of MPI, how many times we happened to meet at a Starbucks down the street by accident, how many times our paths crossed at various events. In terms of looking for specifics, in terms of details of turnover of executive management, I think I've already indicated to the member opposite that would be best asked at a Crown Corporations Committee. I'm glad the member is eager to be at a Crown Corporations Committee, and I can assure him that if I'm still in the current role as House Leader, that I'll ensure that it is called in the statutorily required time frame.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
Well, the minister's the House Leader right now, so he can get that going now. I think Manitobans want to get that information. But again, I mean, the minister has now, what we're hearing, maybe even more than dozens and dozens of meetings, because he's saying they run into each other all over the place. So he must have heard very clearly about the concerns with regards to executives that may have left. So maybe the minister can shed a little bit more light on the nature of those departures and indicate if he's aware of the use of non-disclosure agreements in the departure of those executive members.
The Honourable Minister.
Well, the member should know that if I run into people, casually, whether it's the CEO of MPI or Deputy Minister of Justice or the Special Assistant to the Minister of Justice, at a football game, for tickets that I pay for personally, by the way, or a Jets game for tickets that I pay for personally, by the way. or a concert, I don't usually, pull them aside and start grilling them about turnover in their organization. So if that's the sort of thing that he's thinking that I'm doing, then he doesn't know me well. But I've already indicated to him that he's asking now pretty operational questions. About 45 minutes ago, he was saying that I shouldn't be interfering in a corporation. About 15 minutes ago, he was saying I'm not interfering enough. And now he's wondering why I'm not running the corporation on a day-to-day basis. So there will be a Crown Corporations Committee called within the required time frame. He'll be able to ask questions added in the same way that his leader asked questions in December, although apparently he's not satisfied with the questions that his leader asked. I'm daily not satisfied with the questions that his leader asked, but he'll have that opportunity. He also has other opportunities. I suppose he could avail himself of FIPA to the corporation, because the Crown Corporation is subject to FIPA legislation, if he doesn't want to wait for a Crown Corporations committee.
The honourable member for Concordia.
Well, outside of the bi-weekly meetings that the minister has with the CEO of MPI, it sounds like he runs into him all over the place. So it really does sound like he is running the corporation already. Maybe the minister can shed some light on how many times he's met with the chair of the board of MPI in the last 6 months.
The honourable minister.
I mean, I think, defining running into an individual at an event as and then trying to link that to operating the corporation, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, I ran into, as I mentioned, Jim Goche at an event on Saturday. I'm not running his car dealership because I ran into him at that particular event. I have ran into Johnny Renas at the same event, and I'm not running his auto body shop because I ran into him at that particular event. I sometimes get accused of going to too many events, and I like going to events because I meet lots of people there and I hear about lots of different issues, but the member seems to be equating my association with people at events is then being responsible for operating the things that are within their world, which is of course ridiculous. So I'm not sure why he's trying to make that assertion, but I reject it.
The honourable member for Concordia.
Of course, it's very transparent and easily identified by most paying attention to the proceedings here that the minister didn't dispute that he meets bi-weekly with the CEO of Hydro or of MPI, and that he remains in lockstep with all the actions that have been undertaken there. Of course, we know that the CEO of MPI was handpicked by this government and remains again, very closely linked, not just in terms of the work that's being done, but also apparently socially as well, that the minister spends a lot of time with the CEO at MPI. I'd also like to just note that we asked about the meetings with the board chair and we didn't get a response to that, so I'll ask the minister again, how many times in the last 6 months has he met with the chair of the board of MPI?
The honourable minister.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that I'm social buddies with the minister of, or sort of the CEO of MPI, any more than I'm social buddies with, Mark Chipman, who I might run into at a particular event, or any other well-known individuals in Manitoba. The fact that people, show up in the same place is actually a very Winnipeg thing. The fact we get together and then we meet each other, but we don't necessarily have to suggest that because we meet each other or that we talk to each other that somehow we're running each other's affairs or running each other's business. It's a really odd assertion the member has made. I'm not quite sure why he's going down this really odd and circuitous line of questioning. But he did say at the beginning of that question, before he delved into this weird sort of fantasy about people who meet each other at events or somehow running each other's businesses, before he got into that particular line of questioning, he said that it's clear that I'm in lockstep with the decisions of MPI. Now, again, this is where we've been winding on this sort of road, right? Because he he said that I was a minister who was more than willing to interfere with the operations of MPI. He said that, like, you know, being a critic is fine. I've been a critic before. And sometimes being a critic means you're not always consistent. It's usually good if you're consistent within the same day. It's even better if you're consistent within the same hour. But within the last hour, the member opposite indicated that he thought I was, you know, terribly willing to interfere with the operations of MPI by issuing directives. Because I have issued two. I've issued two on the issue of untendered contracts, which the member opposite in his government never did, despite the fact there being many untendered contracts of high value under MPI. And yes, have issued an organizational review that requires there not to be an application for a rate increase and to let the PUB make the decision. And by the way, I should correct some of the record that the member has left in the public record for the 20 people who are watching, because the member opposite has said that, you know, somehow there's going to be a delayed decision on the rates at MPI. Well, that's not true at all. The PUB is ultimately going to make a rate decision, as the PUB has always made a rate decision. Now, in the course of these 2 days, he's questioned the impartiality of staff of the Legislative Assembly, who he's questioning whether or not they're taking down all of their things that have been taken under advisement. He did that, you know, just before this committee started, and he was wondering where all the different things were that was going to be coming back. And as I indicated to him, there were none, and there was none recorded. And he once again questioned those who do that good work. And now he seems to be questioning impartiality of the PUB. And which is this really strange position, because the NDP in some times in this House in the last couple of years have said that we need to protect the PUB, and now he seems to have been taking the position in the last few months since the directive came out that the PUB can't be trusted, and that somehow, you know, that they're going to be hiding some kind of a rate increase this year because it's an election year. So, you know, he's all over the map on these particular issues, Mr. Chairperson, but I'll try to bring him back to some level of consistency, and that is to say that the PUB will again, you know, look at the finances of Manitoba Hydro too, but Manitoba Public Insurance. The Manitoba Public Insurance Corporation will provide financial information to the PUB, and in whatever normal course they make their decision on rates for MPI, the PUB will do that. That's the same as every year. So this is the conspiracy that the member has drawn up. In a normal year, MPI goes to the PUB assesses the financial information, and the PUB makes a decision. This year, the conspiracy year that the member has drawn up, MPI will go to the PUB with information, the PUB will analyze that information, the PUB will establish a rate. It's the exact same process. So I hope that the member opposite will be more careful in the kind of the communications that he's putting out to the public.
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
How many times has the minister met with the chair of the board of MPI in the last 6 months?
The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Member for Concordia.
The minister has committed to this committee that he will bring back. He will undertake to bring back a number for the number of times that he's met with the CEO of MPI in the last 6 months. I'd ask if he would make a similar commitment to bring back a number of how many times he has met with the chair of the board of MPI in the last 6 months.
The Honourable Minister.
By meeting, would he be also asking about incidental times when I would run into the chair of the board? Is he talking about emails of this sort of contact? Like, what can he be more clear in terms of what he defines as a meeting?
The Honourable Member for Concordia.
How many times has the minister met with the chair of the board of MPI in the last 6 months?
The Honourable Minister.
I just want to make sure that there's consistency. So when he asked the question about the CEO of MPI, he wanted me to include sort of social gatherings. Is he looking for the same criteria. I don't want to provide the wrong information to the member.
The honourable member for Concordia.
Again, leave that to the minister's discretion. How many times has he met with the chair of the board of MPI in the last 6 months?
The honourable minister.
And apply my discretion to answering that question as an undertaking, but I hope not to get criticized by the member then if he doesn't like the discretion he's asked me to apply.
The honourable member for Concordia.
So can the minister just confirm that he has no knowledge of how many executives have left MPI in the last 2 years?
The honourable minister.
The member hasn't given a description of what his classification of executives is, but again, I've indicated to him that one sometimes hears about individuals who are leaving the corporation, but I don't have a specific number now.
The honourable member for Concordia.
What did the minister hear?
The honourable minister.
I've heard of people sometimes leaving the corporation who I might personally classify as an executive.
The honourable member for Concordia.
Sorry, I didn't catch the end of that statement.
The honourable minister.
I do sometimes hear of individuals who leave a corporation like MPI who I might classify as an executive.
The honourable member for Concordia.
The executive is the classification. I think the minister would know that. I assume he would know that. The people of Manitoba pay quite a hefty salary to the minister to be the minister responsible for MPI. So I do hope that he understands what an executive is at his own corporation, the corporation that he's responsible for administering on behalf of the people of Manitoba. You know, I think it's quite remarkable what we've heard today here, that the minister has confirmed that he meets at least bi-weekly with the CEO of MPI, that he apparently meets multiple times as well with the chair, although we're waiting to hear back on how many times the minister has met in the last 6 months. It's clear, of course, that the minister has been well briefed on the issues at MPI. He is well aware of the concerns surrounding Project Nova, concerning the overall organizational structure of MPI. He understands that those that organizational mismanagement is impacting rates that Manitobans are paying with regards to their MPI and their autopack rates every year, including this most recent year. Of course, people are paying more as of April 1st because of concerns about mismanagement by the PUB at MPI. And yet the minister has been working side by side with the CEO at every step. Of course, their own hand-picked CEO and their own hand-picked board. They have been working together in lockstep every step of the way with regards to Project Nova and other mismanagement that the minister clearly or openly admits is the case over at MPI. And yet, considering all of that information and you know, knowing that, and of course it's very obvious that the people of Manitoba are concerned about this, he refuses to call a Crown Corporations meeting, which would allow the people of Manitoba to get some information about this, would allow them to get some answers about where that $200 million and counting cost overrun is actually being spent. Understand the nature of this this boondoggle. Understand that this is just the beginning. Of course, that you know, despite this minister's doublespeak, we know that that $290 million is potentially just the beginning in terms of actually fulfilling the goals of this project upgrade. You know, the minister, I think, quite freely admitting that it's going to go higher, although he won't give us a number of what he estimates it will be. Of course, he doesn't want to do that. We know this is very political now. That's why he's been brought in as the minister responsible for this particular file. He's been very successful in the past as you know, the minister who cut emergency rooms. Well, you know, I appreciate that the critic for education is focusing on the cuts that were undertaken by this minister when he was Minister of Education. However, I'll take him back a little bit further yet, because we know this was the minister who cut our healthcare system first, and went around and closed emergency rooms, set in place the plan to close rural emergency rooms and rural healthcare facilities as well. So he's got a track record, and when brought in to clean up the mess over at MPI, I think he's realized that this is completely a boondoggle of this government's own making, and now in desperate times is saying, well, we won't call a Crown Corporations meeting and won't answer the questions in detail at the during the estimates process. Of course, he's not going to answer during question period. I mean, that's an obvious starting point. But would be given an opportunity to give the people of Manitoba the information that they're so desperately seeking right now about why their rates are going up and only will go up further in the future. But of course, when will this ministerial inquiry conclude? Wow, it's just so happens it'll be after the next election. Isn't that an interesting coincidence? And it's very frustrating that the minister thinks so little of the people of Manitoba that they don't see through this very transparent attempt to try to not bring that information forward. So, we're left with these forum to bring forward these questions. The minister refuses to answer in depth any of the questions, and it's frustrating, but we'll continue to ask them here in question period, in the media, in the hallway, any chance we get. I'm looking forward to getting some answers from this minister.
The member's time has expired. The Honourable Minister.
I like to think that I'm sort of an available person when it comes to media and questions. I think I almost never miss question period because I really like question period. I enjoy question period. I look forward to the questions that I get from the members. I don't get as many questions as I actually would like. I'd be happy to take more questions from the member opposite, but he rarely asks questions. And then when questions are asked, like the questions from the leader of the official opposition at a Crown Corporation committee just a few months ago, when the cost increase of Project Nova was known, and when the leader of the opposition and others could ask questions and did ask questions, apparently he's unsatisfied with those questions that are asked. Now, I know that he's now taking advice from the member for Transcona, as he indicates. The member for Transcona is providing him advice. The very member for Transcona that just earlier this week decided to declare for Manitobans that he was poor and that he couldn't afford the basic things. Walked around with a sign that says, "Help me, I'm poor. Brother, can you spare a dime?" And I say to the member opposite, if he doesn't think that his MLA salary of just north of $100,000 is a living wage, then he's out of touch with Manitoba. So he can make comments if he'd like about my time as the education minister. That's fair game. I'm a public official. My record is there. He can do as he likes. But so is his. And walking around telling the public that he's poor with his MLA salary, in addition to whatever pension he might be receiving from his illustrious and well thought of career in the education system, I think perhaps speaks to his own judgment. So he can question my judgment if he likes, but I will spend some time questioning his. Now, of course, we've heard from the leader of the opposition what his plan is when it comes to healthcare. He already declared, I think on a podcast, that he wouldn't reopen emergency rooms that were converted to urgent care centers, so he's endorsing that right there. But then he went even further, saying that he wouldn't make those changes, but that he would start cutting shared health. Things like, I guess, the Children's Hospital, which is in shared health, or the Selkirk Mental Health Center, which is in shared health, or the Health Sciences Center itself. He's going to cut the Health Sciences Center. It's Manitoba's hospital, and the great work that they're doing over there with building new surgical centers. So we know the NDP's record. They've got MLAs who think that their $100,000 salary is too little and it leaves them impoverished and too poor. They're now looking to, cut the Children's Hospital, looking to cut the Health Sciences Center, the cancer care unit. So they're, and this is just the beginning. The NDP really haven't started to talk about what their election plans are yet. But the very little that we've seen, about their election plan so far involves, I guess, asking for salary increases for their MLAs because you can't make ends meet on $100,000 and plus whatever pension is being received, and they're going to start shutting down things like the Health Sciences Center and the Children's Hospital. I mean, this is like a snippet. They haven't even gotten to taxation, and we all know what they would do with taxation because members opposite, and now of course the member for Concordia has his head down, and he should. I would keep your head down because he'll remember when he during the 2011 election campaign went around to the good folks of Concordia and told them, he said, "Read my lips, no new taxes." His constituents told me that. They said, "Matt, we thought he was the member for Concordia, we thought he was a good guy. He knocked on my door and he said, 'I'm not gonna raise your taxes.'" And then the ballots went into the box. He came out with his victory. He wiped his hands. He walked into the legislature. His premier said, "We're gonna raise taxes." And he cheered and said, "Yes, let's raise taxes," completely forgetting the promise that he made to his own constituents. So I look forward to seeing this election platform of the NDP, which has started off with closing down, I guess, the Health Sciences Center, moved over to trying to find more money for the member for Transcona, who isn't able to make ends meet with his $100,000 a year salary and his pension, and seeing what other taxes that are going to increase on the poor people of Manitoba to increase those MLA salaries. So I'm happy to sit here for the next few weeks and talk about the bad record of the NDP if the member opposite wants to continue on with this line of questioning.
Okay. I'm going to say to the critic and to the minister, I will remind all involved. I will say to the member for Concordia and to the minister that we are here to discuss the estimates for the Department of Justice. And I got lost somewhere in all of that. And so I would just remind those members, the minister and the member, to please stay on track, to please keep it relevant, and to please remember why we're here and why people are watching. So, the member for Concordia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate your guidance, and of course that is the purpose of us being here today, and that's why we're so eager to point out the significant failures that this government has undertaken, in this case on MPI, and the cost overruns that are costing Manitobans more, and are costing ratepayers, in this case of Autopac, more money every single month. And of course, in a cost of living crisis, this is important. This is what Manitobans are telling us are very concerned about. So, the minister might be, very flippant in his answers. He might be cavalier as to the amount of $200 million. He said the other day in the question period, it's no big deal. He thought it wasn't a boondoggle. I think the people of Manitoba certainly would think it's a boondoggle. The other, aspect I would just point out, of course, with regards to justice, we did spend quite a bit of time, although not as much as I would have liked, asking questions about specifics within the Department of Justice. Hoped that the minister would give us some detail with regards to, even simple questions about staffing and about vacancy or issues around vacancy within the department. Of course, around Crown attorneys, this is an issue that's live right now. It just so happened we were in estimates, and I was asking those questions. Not the day after did Crown attorneys come out and say this is a serious issue, and we need some answers from this government. So we gave the minister the opportunity to answer directly to those Crown attorneys. He didn't do so. That's incredibly disrespectful to those Crown attorneys who are working so hard right now to try to keep our justice system moving forward. And, you know, they're doing so at a time when they've seen a government walk away from their responsibilities around public safety, and you know, talk a good game, use divisive language, try to rile up their base, you know, their mega base, get them all fired up. But at the end of the day, what's really on people's minds is, why is the justice system so under strain, and why is my personal safety and my community safety getting worse under this PC government? Why is it that things are actually worse now than they were 7 years ago? And I think most Manitobans are smart enough. The conversation has gotten to the level where people understand that their root causes of crime do have an impact on their own personal safety and their community safety. And so when we go knock on a door in my own constituency of Concordia, and somebody says, my garage was broken into, I say, yeah, this is terrible. This is exactly the kind of thing we need to address. And I say, and you know that the addictions crisis is out of control in this province, and they nod their head. And I say, you know that this PC government has completely abdicated any responsibility for making things better for people who are suffering from addictions, and they nod their head. And I say, you know that the homelessness problem has become even more pronounced since this government started cutting funding for poverty initiatives, started freezing the minimum wage, started cutting housing supports, cut the number of subsidized housing in this province. I mean, it's just unfathomable at a time when there's so much need that this government has continued this complete focus on austerity and cuts, until this election year. And then they say, well, no, don't worry, we've changed. We've come to a new position now under the same cabinet, the same premier, and the same old people behind the scenes who are calling the shots. There's nothing changed. It's the same old PC party, but of course now they say, trust us, we're different. Manitobans understand cuts have consequences. Every one of those cuts that I listed earlier with regards to this, that has this minister's fingerprints all over it, every one of those cuts has pressured the justice system because of actions of this government. And so now the minister wants to say that they are going to change, that they're going to be completely different than they've been for 7 years. That, every question that I asked here that he refused to answer, once again, talking in circles, being dismissive, being flippant, just pretending, I don't even know. What are you talking about? I don't even get, this is the kind of stuff that Manitobans see right through. And the effects that in their communities are real. So I hope that the minister will take some time to reflect on his performance here today, and maybe change his ways. Maybe just come clean with Manitobans. He's proud of his record of $290 million wasted at MPI. He should come out and be proud of that and say that. I look forward to ceding the rest of my time to the member for Tyndall Park, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank the staff for coming in, the opportunity to ask questions here today.
The Honourable Minister.
Well, I think it's important to correct the record in many ways. Of course, the member opposite sat in the government when he talks about MPI. They tried to transfer. I know he's defensive. He doesn't want me to put this on the record, but I'm going to put it on the record anyway. He tried to transfer $20 million from MPI surplus to universities. Now, that's not speaking ill about universities. Like I was spent 8 years in University of Manitoba, but that is not what the expectation of that money is, to move $20 million of a surplus from MPI into universities. Now, of course, Gary Dewar had to back off of that. The member opposite was the executive assistant to Gary Dewar, I think, at the time. He had to back off of that decision, but that's how they treated MPI. And I won't get into all the untenanted contracts and the $50,000 contract to Marilyn McLaren to do nothing. I've talked about that before. I could talk about it again. But I do want to talk a bit about this issue of justice that he raised and to compare the two records. I mean, let's think about these two records. We had a former government when they had warrants, outstanding warrants, So this government, together with under the leadership of our Premier, has decided to create an integrated warrant unit, high risk. It's called different things, but certainly part of the role is going to be ensure that those who have high risk warrants are sought after. Do you remember what the former NDP government did when it came to warrants? They deleted them. They actually deleted the warrants. And I remember asking together, I think, with the member for Springfield at the time, what happened to the warrants? Well, the Minister of Justice sat in his office and he deleted them. Delete. And because there was a story that came out about the thousands of outstanding warrants that they had, and then suddenly all the warrants had gone down, and we wondered, well, I guess, they got police to go out and take action on these warrants. No, they just deleted them from the system. And that is how the NDP treated justice. We had questions at the time about high-risk car thieves. It was a big issue in the 1990s before mobilizers came in through auto manufacturers. But high-risk car thieves, and I would ask questions right where the member for Transcona is sitting. I sat in that seat, and I would ask questions about high-risk car thieves and how they were dealing with those individuals. And what we found that they were doing? They were buying them Slurpees. They had a fund where they would take high-risk car thieves to 7-Eleven, and listen, I like a good Slurpee. Okay, I'm not gonna deny that. But go to 7-Eleven and buy them Slurpees. That's how they treated high-risk car thieves, who, by the way, weren't just stealing cars, but were causing crashes on the streets of Winnipeg and many, many people who were being injured. That was how they dealt with things. I would go through. I remember touring a jail at one time and seeing that prisoners were watching inappropriate material and raising that with then Andrew Swan. Well, it was pornography, and raising that with then Minister Andrew Swan. And he said, well, I don't think I'm really in charge of that. Well, about a month later, they found out that he was in charge of the jails. He discovered that. But there had been several months where prisoners were ordering UFC fights and different sorts of things because their cable package had changed and nobody had put any restriction on it. So they were watching pay-per-view and watching all sorts of other things. I mean, the list could go on and on and on in terms of how the NDP treated justice and compare it to our government. A very, very different approach. Now, I think the member for Transcona, who's trying to figure out his budget for next week and how he's going to make ends meet, might sit there and go, but things have changed. We're different now. We're not the same as we were under Gary Dewar or Greg Selinger. And yet he could go to the member for Gary, his own member, and say, why is it that you don't think bail should be strengthened? Why don't you think bail should be tougher? Because the member for Gary indicated he doesn't believe that bail should be tougher. The only party in Canada who doesn't believe there should be stronger bail provisions is the NDP opposition. So I look forward to the election campaign, whenever it's called, to contrast our record on justice with this current NDP opposition on justice and the former NDP government on justice.
Okay, before recognizing the member for Tyndall Park, I do want to say that not all of those comments were within the boundaries of relevance, and I would ask that we keep that on track. The honourable member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. And I'd like to thank the Minister for his time this afternoon. And I do not get a lot of time, unfortunately, and so I'm hoping that the Minister will work with me to the best of his ability to answer a few of my questions. This one comes actually from a conversation I had with a constituent earlier this week. I suspect that the department has heard about Kira's law. Are there currently any plans for this government to follow suit and bring forward a motion to protect victims, including children of domestic violence?
The Honourable Minister.
In the interest of time, if the member wants to contact my office, we can personally meet and she can provide some details and we can pursue that from there.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The Minister knows I'm a big fan of youth justice committees, and I've been advocating for them since I first got elected back in 2016. I recognize it was actually the former NDP government who got rid of all the youth justice committees here in the province of Manitoba, and I'm just wondering if the Minister has any plans to recreate or bring something forth that would be similar in nature, that allows for opportunities for restoration, especially for those who are younger, who may want the opportunity to show that they are remorseful rather than have to go into our criminal justice system.
The Honourable Minister.
I do actually appreciate the member's heart for this issue, and I know that he's raised it along with Kevin Lambrew when he was an MLA in this chamber before he went to Ottawa. So those youth criminal justice committees are statutorily created under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, so we don't have tremendous interaction with them. There are 54 community justice committees that still do exist, though, across the province. If the member feels that, in some ways those can be enhanced, I'm open to her ideas on that, because like her, I do think that often there are ways for certain kinds of offenders, if they're appropriate offenders, to find restoration and sometimes restitution in different ways.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. In Manitoba, the Women's Correctional Centre for those serving sentences under 2 years is overcrowded and lacks substantive programming for inmates to set goals and work towards them. Understaffing also leaves women without support. What are the current plans in motion to address this?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank the member for the question. So there are certainly programs such as therapeutic drug treatments both at Headingley and the Women's Correctional Centre. Is something that I championed when I was in opposition, and I was glad to see our government bring that forward. There are committees that are always looking for additional ways. But I'd actually offer this to the member opposite. I think she's invited me to her McDonald's coffee shop at different times. But I'd be happy if she wants to do a tour together of the Women's Correctional Centre. We could do that together. And coming out of that, she might have some ideas.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I will definitely take the Minister up on that. In follow-up, there's only one halfway house for women in Winnipeg. Can the Minister share what plans the department has to provide mental health, addictions, and trauma services for those when released from being incarcerated?
Honourable Minister.
I'm advised by officials that halfway houses are federally run.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Can the Minister explain the reasons why there are no provincially run Indigenous-led halfway houses as alternatives to incarceration in Manitoba? And I recognize his last answer was suggesting that it is a federal role, but I think that the province also has a role to play, whether it's through finances or other means.
The Honourable Minister.
So I appreciate the member's question. Certainly we share some of those same concerns. As an example, we have within the facilities, we're looking at healing lodges, so we understand the nature of culturally appropriate programs for restoration. But when it comes to halfway houses, I did mention that those are federal programs because we have a different parole system. Manitoba's release on 2/3 of serving of the sentence. Federally, there are other opportunities for release earlier, like day paroles and different sorts of release systems. So we have things like the Walking Bear program, but the halfway houses are because of the ability to obtain parole in earlier fashions federally.
The Honourable Member for Tyndall Park.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. And can the department confirm for us if judicial justices and other family court professionals currently receive training in domestic violence and trauma? And just watching the clock here, this will be my last question. And so I just also want to take this opportunity to thank the Minister for answering my question so directly this afternoon, as well as the critic for the NDP for allowing me a bit of time.
The Honourable Minister.
Because of the limited time, we'll undertake that to get that back to the member in a relatively short period of time. I also want to thank her for her questions. Her questions are always thoughtful and direct, and so that makes answering them much more easier. She's done an excellent job as a critic. I've indicated to her happy to tour with her at the Winnipeg Correctional Centre, and maybe I'll have the opportunity to join her at McDonald's again sometime. And I want to wish her well as she plans her wedding this summer.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, we will now proceed with the resolutions. For the information of the committee regarding 4.8, there are no monies allocated for resolution 4.8 this year, so it doesn't need to be a vote. The information was included in the books to reflect the changes from last year. Resolution 4.2, resolve that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $61,203,000 for justice, Crown Law for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 4.3, resolve that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $3,841,000 for justice, Legislative Council for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 4.4. Resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $241,187,000 for justice, correctional services for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 4.5. Resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $86,498,000 for justice, courts, for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 4.6. Resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $307,188,000 for justice, public safety, for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 4.7. Resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $5,037,000 for justice, capital assets, for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. The last item to be considered for the estimates of this department is item 4.1A, the Minister's salary contained in Resolution 4.1. At this point, we request that all Ministerial and Opposition staff leave the chamber for the consideration of this last item. Floor is open for questions. Are there any questions? Seeing none. If a motion. Nope. So then Resolution 4.1. Resolve that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $68,075,000 for justice, corporate and strategic services for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. This completes the estimates of the Department of Justice, and given that it is almost 5 o'clock, we will recess for one minute.
Yeah. This section can't rise. So yeah, it'll just be.
I don't. The hour being 5 p.m., committee rise, call on the Speaker. The hour being 5 p.m., this House is adjourned and stands adjourned until 1:30 p.m. on Monday, May 8th. Just letting that sink in.